Because you've got powerful legs. How'd you get the physique? Was it gym or how'd you get the physique?
I've always been...
She's actually not got powerful legs. Do you shower in your dressing room? Do you have a shower on the day of a fight or not? Tell us about the tattoos.
Shut the fuck up, you little prick.
But then I've got the Phoenix.
Hey, prick.
So I'll take it from Bob every day of the week.
Absolute disgrace.
That's your knowing or mine.
Move him out of here, Darren.
Ricky Hatton didn't go over for his fighter because he risked getting abducted and sold into sexual
I never said that.
Both have been rape victims. I'm not watching Frank Buglioni live on Saturday night. Out of your mind.
Jesus Christ, get yourself a life.
He's actually a priest.
Yeah.
It's because his brother John Fury eye gouged him.
What have I told you all this time? He's going to end up sucked out, fucked out, looking for a handout.
Boxing nutters messenger group. I'm gonna be the king.
J-Pump. You know what I'm saying?
Welcome, everyone, to the 586th edition of the Boxing Asylum Nuthouse, a proud member of the Sports Social Network, found every Sunday, almost, I keep saying that every week, but no, close to every Sunday, 8 o'clock in the UK, 12 Pacific time in the United States, and I'm happy to have Des with me here, and I don't know if Ames is making it this week or Rob, but we're going to rock on through this. We got a Canelo fight week, which is always a big deal stateside, but to kick it off, we're going to talk about some Japanese boxing, these Japanese fighters just taking over 118 and 122 pounds. But 122 pounds is controlled by one Japanese guy and one Japanese guy alone. That man's name, Inoue, and he continues to be in absolute control of this division, and his opponents taking out TJ Doheny in the 7th round. And Doheny got in some good sweeping shots in there. He won a couple of rounds off of Inoue on one of the judges' scorecards. He wasn't not doing anything in there, but he was the body work started to add up. And Des, I don't know how he did it, but Inoue managed to hit Doheny so hard on the right side of his body that he hurt his spine. That takes a hell of a puncher.
Yes, it does. And it had Nicky Cook vibes, didn't it? And if anyone remembers that one, look, when your back goes, you're absolutely disabled. And TJ showed all the signs that I think it was his left leg stopped moving and he was hobbling around and he was absolutely disabled. Let's talk about what happened in the 6.5 rounds before that.
It was like a sciatica pinch, right? Almost.
Yeah, I mean, I've never had sciatica, and people that have had it tell me how painful it is. I remember studying the body and the anatomy, and I remember looking at a demonstration of when someone slips their disc. And if you can imagine, between all your vertebrae, there's a little disc, and on that disc is like a little egg yolk. And when that egg yolk comes away from the vertebrae, that's a slip disc. I'm not saying Doheny had that, but that's a type of injury that it looked to me like there was a real sharp shooting pain up his body, and he had to turn away, and he couldn't move his left leg. Look, boxers are the bravest sports people of them all. Doheny done ever so well getting in there with a monster. He had a plan. He tried to implement it, and it was a plan based on, I'm going to sit on the back foot. I'm not going to be particularly proactive, but I'm going to try and stay out of trouble, and try and touch Inoue when I can. And let's be honest, Matty, I don't know how you saw it, but he did have some success. I mean, I was watching the fight with my son, and I'm explaining to my son how impressive Inoue is. And for the first 3 rounds, my son was saying, well, TJ's landing his own shots here. He's staying out of trouble, and he's landing, but he wasn't denting Inoue. And with that type of style, it's very dangerous to try and play with fire when you're dealing with a counter puncher like Inoue. I had it TJ in survival mode very early, but he had a plan. He was more proactive than, say, Paul Butler, if anyone remembers that one. But by round 4...
I think Stephen Hawking would have been more proactive than Paul
Yeah,
Butler.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. He was more proactive than Paul, and he was a little bit more, I've got a plan here, and I'm going to try and take this guy into the last quarter. It's unfair to say that TJ was never going to win, but he had a plan, and we have to respect him for that. And I think he showed elements of a tough guy in there in them 6 rounds. I think I come away thinking, you know what, TJ, you've played the hand you're dealt, and you've given it your best go, and you've not. I've seen guys against monsters go out in the first round, throwing everything at him and getting stopped, and that's almost like I went out on my shield. TJ was a bit more measured than that, but I think by round 4, Inoue was putting hands on him, and when I think it was the end of round 4, TJ sat down and he was heavily marked, and you could see that it's the slight punches, it's the grazing punches, it's the ones he's not quite missing that are going to affect him. And by round 6, it was a case of not if Inoue is going to stop TJ. It was more a case of what round you pick, and it come in the 7th, as you spoke about. But I don't think TJ disgraced himself. I think TJ took on a monumental challenge. I think he showed elements of a tough guy in there, but he was always going to be outgunned. And it was a pretty first gear performance from Inoue, but he's entitled to have one of them, and he moves on to the next one and the next challenge. But no disgrace for TJ, and onwards and upwards for Inoue.
Yeah, it's kind of funny when people think it was one of his best performances and he stopped a naturally bigger guy in the 7th round, with maybe losing a round or 2. That shows you where the bar has been set for him. And, when he really took over in that 6th round, I'll tell you, when he had Doheny cornered and he was unleashing those body shots, he was putting a lot into those. And a lot of that damage added into, the conclusion in the 7th round. When he was landing those shots to the body, it was like a shotgun going off. I mean, you can tell a real puncher just by the sound it makes when they hit people. That's one of those things where you're probably in the 25th row and you can just hear it just clear as a bell. It was just fantastic body work. But in a way, we talked about this, but not for this fight, but I think in another fight we discussed it. His defense really comes from his legs. He that's in and out. That's what he's doing, kind of like Pacquiao did. But Pacquiao had a few more defensive wrinkles, in my opinion, because in a way his head is pretty darn static, Des. And I just get this hunch they're saying he's coming over to the U.S. next. I don't see much that's there for him. Like, would maybe he'd fight Akhmadaliev here, I guess, but I would think that with the arrangement with Top Rank that he's looking at a 126-pound fight. And I don't know, who might win the rematch between Espinosa and Ramirez, but I'll tell you what, a sharpshooter like Ramirez, I think he could be Inoue's foil should he move up to 126 pounds, and that's who he comes who he comes into the ring against.
Yes, possibly. I mean, look, we can look at that we can look at the 126 division and think, who do we pick there? Me personally, I think they're going to get him Angelo Leo. I think that's the one they're going to pick for him. I think Angelo's got the style. He's not a big puncher. I think he's got the frame.
We thought he wasn't a big puncher, but at 126, he's got 3 or 4 fights, I think, by knockout or all of them. And then that knockout of the year candidate too. Yeah. I don't know.
No, but I think there's I think there's nuances to all them results, and I think you've got to put the Lopez one on its own shelf. I think Lopez for a lot of wild punches that night. I think his chin was in the air. I think he was erratic, but that's kind of indicative of what we've seen from Lopez throughout his career. And I think Leo is ever so polished. I don't think he has anything like that type of success against Inoue. But look, again, I mean, you call them, Espinosa, Ramirez, Lee Wood, Leo, Figueroa, Lopez, Ford, if he hangs around now. You could pick any of them guys for Inoue. He's a genuine superstar. He's a genuine pound for pounder. And if he jumps up, they're all going to want that one. Whether they get it in America or not, I'm not quite sure. That's a big step to go up to featherweight, because I thought super bantam would be his ceiling. But if he goes up to feather and he takes on, I mean, there's some monsters in that division. If he does it in America as well, I mean, that really is pushing the envelope. But I really fancy, look, let's have it be said now, I really fancy the Leo one, because I just think his frame, his style, and the type of punch he doesn't have would really suit Inoue. I think it's more of a safe play than a long-armed, tall, marauding fighter like a Figueroa. I think
Figueroa is a really rough test. If you just want to isolate him alone for a second here, he's big, he's a strong puncher, and unlike Espinosa, who is just tall and lanky as crap, Brandon is physically stout. Like I could see him kind of just backing up in a way and giving him a hard night. I actually think that's a fantastic fight. I don't think the conclusion is decided. I could see both guys hitting the canvas, because I get this feeling that Figueroa would want to test out Inoue's power, and he would at one point, and he would say, "Oh, oops." But I do think you would come through that. And I just think it's a fantastic fight. And the last half of the fight is going to be nip and tuck with the edge of your seat kind of stuff. Like if I don't think they would go for it. Obviously, Figueroa being PVC, it's a much tougher fight to be. But I think that Brandon Figueroa would be his toughest test at 126, because you're talking about a guy who, I don't know how he made 122. He's probably a lightweight fighting featherweight at this point in time. It's a tall task in more ways than one.
I couldn't agree more, Matty. I like Brandon at feather. I mean, don't forget, he's been beaten by Fulton, who was outclassed by Inoue. But all that to one side, because there's nuance to those results. I think at feather, I think Brandon's in natural weight class, and I think he's a long-armed, marauding, tall fighter. I'm not quite sure that's the type of water that Inoue or his people would want him to dip his toe in first fight at featherweight. I look at Espinosa, very similar to Figueroa. I think he might be a bit too feral at that weight, and I think Ramirez is a bit too polished, that can punch, that knows his way around. And outside of that, I think if you want to go down the Ray Vargas or the Lopez, I don't think there's no value in them fights for Inoue. So I think you're going to keep it someone that's current, is hot, someone that's in vogue, and I think that's Angelo Leo. So remember, I said it to you. I think they're going to pick Leo for him if he decides to go up to featherweight. But if he doesn't, I'm not quite sure what he does at super bantam. But there's loads types of TJ Doheny fights for Inoue. But whether that's enough to quench the thirst of the Japanese public or top rank or the viewing audience, whether they want to get him over to the Riyadh season, whether they want to get him into America, they're going to find a big challenge for him. So we'll wait and see.
There's two fights that I like for Nakatani at 122 pounds, and one of them isn't even against a 122-pound fighter, and that's Junto Nakatani. I think that's a big all-Japanese battle. Everybody could make money on that one, really good money, and it's an interesting puncher's battle, because Nakatani can flat out bang. I mean, that uppercut of his is a vile weapon, and it could be a very easy fight to make. And it's I don't know. It's a question if they want to get that one potentially out of the way before a featherweight journey, because I don't think that's a fight that happens at 126.
No, I agree. That's a really interesting fight.
And the other one would be Akhmadaliev, but that's just basically clearing the deck at this point in time.
And that's what he would be doing. And I think if you hang around at, say, Super Bantam, I think you're clearing the deck. Look, and I want to be really clear here. We're not on this pod to disrespect fighters. TJ Doheny come across as a man with a plan, and when it weren't going well for him, I thought he was a bit of a hard man in there, and I'm going to give him that. But we always knew what a hard, difficult ask it was going to be for Doheny. I think if Inoue hangs around at Super Bantam, yeah, Akhmadaliev is the one you'd look at. I really don't want. I mean, from a British perspective, I really hope we don't fast track Liam Davis for a quick buck, because that kid's a talent. That kid's got an awful lot going for him. But I think throwing him in with an Inoue, I don't think that would be a good idea. So perhaps I'm kind of waiting for Inoue to move on up to featherweight so we can look at the next challenge. But I think there's not a lot other than Akhmadaliev at Super Bantam for him, if I'm honest, Matty.
Yeah, that's kind of all that's left. Move Nakatani up. So yeah, you just end up in that position, and you have to decide how far you're willing to chase your legacy, and if taking a loss really does scare you that much. I mean, you look at a guy like Inoue, 4-weight division, 2 divisions he's been undisputed in. A loss on his career, on his ledger, in another weight class, that in no way diminishes his legacy. I don't care what the outcome is. I don't care if he gets knocked out in a round. What he's accomplished at this point in time is stunning. And he's, I think, God, I'm trying to think about who might even stack up to him. I'd have to say he's probably the greatest Japanese boxer in history.
No, I think for me, I said it last week. I think he's the greatest small man I've ever seen. And I've done a bit of research on boxing. I think he's the greatest small man. Anything under Super Bantamweight down, I think he's been the greatest I've ever seen. I mean, this is a guy that punches like Triple G. He's got great feet, great hands. He stands in front of you. He's not the type of guy that goes on his bike. He takes on big challenges. I think he's brilliant. I think he's a pound for pounder. He's top 3 in my book, and there's some very good top 5 pound for pounders around in this era at the moment. Just going back a step, if His Excellency was to think, look, how can we bring Inoue and the Japanese clique into what we're doing here, which is really where we want to touch all 4 corners of the world. Look, it's very similar to a TJ Doheny type fight, but maybe a Sam Goodman is something we could see Inoue.
That's true. That's another one that is there undefeated.
And it works. It works. He's not a puncher. He's undefeated. He's from Australia. Inoue's from Japan. If you bring them together in Riyadh, I think it hits that whole boxing's a global sport vibe. And I think maybe that's, if you're going to see Inoue, what I'm trying to say is if you're going to see Inoue hang around at Super Bantam, it'd be for a fight like that.
You know, I'll tell you what, one of the easiest bets you could make is if there was a fight between those two and it was in Saudi Arabia, easy money, more Australians getting arrested than Japanese that week. Easy money if you get a chance to take that bet. I don't even know who would be crazy enough to put those odds up there. But yeah, it's we'll see where he goes from here. But at this point in time, I say it's set in stone. I mean, people can talk about Roy Jones and where he was at before the Ruiz debacle, but that's its own animal. I think this is it's very interesting for him with the Top Rank connection. Lots of 126-pound fights can be made. So we do look forward to seeing what is next from the monster, who comes away with another knockout victory. Just too easy as far as money goes on that one. They don't even give you good odds, though. You got to pick rounds and stuff. So, but anyhow, on the undercard of that was a really fun fight between champion Yoshiki Takei and former 112-pound champion Daiko Higa. This for a 118-pound strap. in a really good back and forth fight with Higa trying to back Takei up against the ropes, when Takei trying to use the center of the ring, use his sharp shooting to get the job done. He went down in the 11th. It was a questionable knockout down call. I think it could have gone either way from the angles I saw. But then Takei came out in the 12th round, guns blazing. Could have arguably scored that one 10-8 the way he smacked Higa around. I think that fight could have gone either way. It was a UD for Takei, 2 114, 113s, and a 115, 112 on there. But I'll tell you, Des, this is a definitely must watch. And I'll give it to Takei. He's got one very special tool that I hope people notice. And I almost think that he might be right hand dominant, because that right uppercut of his is short, sweet, and accurate. He lands it in just the strangest places, and he doesn't need a lot of gap to get some leverage on it.
He's a really good fighter. And we spoke about this guy a few times on the pod. We spoke about him when he won his world title. He going in 8-0 against, was it Mahoney?
Yeah, Maloney.
Maloney. And he boxed brilliantly for the first 5, and then he consolidated for the next 3. But we really found out an awful lot about, his cojones in the last quarter of that fight. And Maloney was really pressing him. And any other country, it might have been stopped. And there'd been a lot of fighters that would have got themselves out of there because he was drowning. It was championship boxing. It was in the area he's never been before, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 round boxing against an experienced fighter like Maloney. And he hung tough and he hung in there. And the way they've matched him again against Higa, who going in was 21-2, former world champion. And Higa asked so many questions of him. Now, I like the way this fight was going, because what we saw was Takei was the confident fighter going in, and he won the first 3 rounds for me. And Higa changed it a little bit. You saw Higa go, look, I can't give this guy room. I'm gonna have to press him. I'm gonna see what he's made of. And there must be something in a fighter that says, look, I've had double the amount of fights this guy's had. I've been boxing all my life, amateur and pro. This guy's come into the sport late. I'm gonna see what he's made of. And Higa did that. And he started pressing the fight, and he forced Takei to work under pressure. But Takei responded, and it was a real nip and tuck fight. We was talking an awful lot on the chat, all of us, how we saw it. I thought that pressing the fight the way Higa would cost him. I thought it was a last throw of the dice, but it worked for him, and he was starting to get a foot in the fight. Was it round 11 that Takei got dropped, Matty?
Yeah, and it was questionable, kind of. It was a little weird.
But it was a fair knockout, fair knockdown, wasn't it? Because a punch landed. I think it was on top of the head, wasn't it? Or as he was turning.
Yeah, it was kind of looked like it was like one of those cuffs where you probably could have called it either way. So I don't know that you can complain, but when you lose a fight by a point, it could have been a draw the other way.
Yes.
Higa could definitely be felt hard done by it, I think.
So if you're Takei and you've had that what some people call a soft knockdown, where you're half on the turn, you're half off balance, and a punch has landed, how do you respond to that? What's the best way of responding to that, Matty?
You got to come out guns blazing.
You get up and you show him who's boss. And for every second of that fight, for the rest of the 11th and the 12th, Takei showed who's boss. And I remember Oscar doing the same to Ike Corte all them years ago. This fight depends on the last round. I'm going to show you who's boss. I really, really fell in love with Takei in this one, because he's made a special stuff, because a kid with his lack of knowledge and lack of experience to be in a fight of that magnitude in those deep waters, to be on the floor in the 11th in a close one, to say, I'm leaving nothing to chance. And he went out and put his foot down. I think, look, I come away, fell in love with Higa in that one as well. But I think Takei's the special talent. I think he's the one that they're really pushing. They're matching him quite tough. He's a world champion now. He's not getting any favours, but he's got to work for it. And it was a close fight, a really enjoyable fight. If you haven't watched it, go and watch it. I thought Takei, I think it was Ryan Dill said it with me. he'd done enough in the first half of the fight. He'd banked enough rounds, and it's true he had. And although the knockdown was a knockdown, how would you have scored that round, Matty? Just in your opinion.
So if you take the way that that Takei finished the round on that one, I think it would have been a Takei round.
There you go. And with the knockdown, what did you call it?
And at that point in time, with the way that they set the rules, you got to score at 10-8. But I would normally have scored that round 10-9 before they stepped in.
Correct. I agree. It was very similar to the last round in Tyson and Deontay won, wasn't it? It was like, yes,
well, except that was a hard knockdown, you know, like, but that, yes, Fury definitely owned the rest of that round. That was unreal. Correct. That was honestly one of the craziest things I've ever seen in a 12th round in my entire life.
And at the end of that round, it's very hard to say this is a 10-8. So I think, you know, it was a brilliant fight. If you haven't watched it, go and watch it. I had Takei, in the words of Ryan Deal, he'd just done enough in the first half of the fight. He banked enough rounds. I'm agreeing with that, and I thought he nicked it by about 2 rounds. But it was a close fight, a brilliant fight, and I'm really enjoying Takei's journey. I've been watching him for his last 3, and he's never let me down. He's a talent.
I'll tell you again, like the Japanese really have these weight division just kind of owned at this point in time, and I would like to see Takei against Nakatani. I mean, talk about the battle of the uppercuts. That one,
yeah,
whew, that could be a very, very fun fight as well. There's a lot that they can make over there. I mean, there's a reason I'm waking up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning to watch these fights. I'm like, I ain't missing this. It's not happening.
Well, so we get it over here at sort of 9:30 all the way through to midday on a Tuesday morning.
You gotta have it with lunch.
Honestly, we're in the gym or you're playing a bit of tennis and you're telling people around you, you've got to watch this card. And a lot of these guys, they only know boxing when AJ comes to town, or they talk about Lennox Lewis. Say, no, this is actually happening. This is current. These guys are the best in the business. And you've got guys from the gym sitting down with a coffee, absolutely enthralled with these cards. I think an Inoue card is an event now, and it's something in the UK that we look forward to. People are booking time off work, or people are moving their hours around to accommodate it. I love these Japanese cards.
Oh yeah, they're fantastic, and let's see here. Also on this one, and you called this one pretty much exactly there, Des. Ismael Barroso, hard as he might have tried, and I didn't see this one, so I'm just gonna nurse it over to you and hope you saw it. But he could not keep defying age. He didn't do it in the face this time. Can't do it in the ring either. With Japanese Andy, I'm going to call him Andy Hiroka. Winning by a 9th round stoppage in that one. How did the young 140-pound prospect look there?
Well, he's not been overly active. We spoke about this fight last week, and I always get it whenever I think of Ismael Barroso, I think of you, because you've always got a bit of a thing for a Barroso, and he's a fighter's fighter. He's a boxing fan's favorite. And we all know why. I mean, this guy was going in at 25, 4-2, and of his 25 wins, 23 by knockout. I mean, that's a phenomenal record, isn't it? I mean, that's Julian Jackson type stuff, right?
Well, and he takes his purse, he goes back, and he lives in a third world country like a king, and he comes back a year later. Like, he's got it made. I just think he's hit the end of the road at this time. I mean, I still remember him coming over to y'all's neck of the woods, and God, who did he fight? Anthony Crolla, didn't he?
Anthony Crolla, yeah, he did. But like, you think about this guy, like you say, it's a third world country. You wonder how he gets himself in this type of shape, and how he knows as much as he knows. And of his 25 wins, 23 by KO. And this guy's done it all around the world. I mean, like, if there was a category in the Hall of Fame for this type of road warrior, he'd be first balloter, wouldn't he? He's that good. I mean, like, he really is a fight fan's fighter.
You wonder if he would have moved from Venezuela and decided he wanted to fight more often, become more of a full-time fighter, because I mean, at his age, having around 30 fights, it's just not much. So you're just curious, because he's been able to lean on that left hand of his pretty much his entire career, and a great weapon it is.
and he'll catch you out. I mean, if you look, pronounce the Japanese kid's name for me, Matty.
I probably got it wrong too, but Andy Hiroka, I think, or it would be Hireoka, one of the two.
Can I call him Andy?
Yep, I'm going to call him Japanese Andy. We've got Andy P,
Okay.
we've got Fat Andy Ruiz,
Yeah,
and we've
yeah.
got Japanese Andy.
So Japanese Andy, he's not been overly active, but they're keeping him warm. And I said to you last week, didn't I, that the Japanese are quite fair and honourable people. So they'll keep a fight competitive, but they'll always have the edge. And they had youth, they had punch. I mean, Japanese Andy was 24-0, 19 by way of. He was hot as well. And they've brought Barroso over. We don't know how Barroso travels. We don't know how he was prepared. We don't quite know. All these things we're not going to be privy to. But what we do know is that Japanese Andy would have been on point. And when you throw the factor in of Barroso's age, it really does make you think if Barroso can pull this one off, it would be absolutely. He wouldn't get the credit for it, but we all know as boxing fans what a magnificent achievement it would be. But early on in the fight, I could see that Japanese Andy was he was too live. He was too proactive. He knew, I'm the governor and I'm not going to let you get a foot in this. And we've seen Barroso get a foot in the fight with Rowley. We saw him get a foot very early in the fight and set traps for O'Hara. Japanese Andy weren't playing that game, and he was very, very proactive. He's got good hands, lots of energy as you'd expect. And I wasn't at all surprised. I thought this was a big, big ask for Barroso. But I'm not saying Barroso can't come again. In fact, expect to see him again because he got beat by a good fighter. And I think Japanese Andy goes on to be another good Japanese kid that stacks out these Inoue cards.
It's interesting to see where he might go from here. It's a 140-pound division, so it's not like there's the incredible depth of talent and a huge amount of potential foes for him in Japan. So, we might get to see him fit into, our own conversations and what happens stateside with the 140-pound division. Be interesting to see if he plays at this point in time, because you can't knock that win considering the fact that Raleigh got was handed a victory with him over him by Tony Weeks. It was absolutely ridiculous. And then what he did to Davies was just ridiculous. And even though Raleigh did it over 9 rounds and Davies did it over 1, the idea was that you have these guys who have everything that comes with youth on their side. They can outspeed him. They can be more active and keep his hands at home. The one thing you can't do is be tentative with this fighter. And both of them did, and they both in their own way paid the price for him. And Andy apparently didn't play the tentative game with him. And that's how you beat an old fighter at the end of the day. You go out there and you make them look old.
I agree, and you nailed that, Matty. That was a great summing up. Japanese Andy was proactive. He did not allow Barroso to set traps. He didn't walk into Barroso. He didn't allow Barroso to slow the pace down, fight it the way he wanted to fight it. I think it was Japanese Andy was too proactive, too young, too heavy-handed, and showed us too much energy. But I agree with you. I think we'll see more of Barroso because I don't think this loss is something that you can say, well, that means you're out of it now. I think Barroso has been beaten by a good fighter, a good champion on away soil. So I think we'll see more of Barroso because I think he's got a formula that works. And I think promoters will bring him in to test an up-and-coming fighter that's probably at that just before they get to world level or just on a cusp of winning a world title. On that point, Simon Hill in the chat is confusing Ismael Barroso, who is a very good Venezuelan boxer, with Jorge Linares, who was a brilliant Venezuelan boxer. Jorge Linares was who Kevin Mitchell boxed.
Yeah, there's Linares spent a good amount of time over there. A lot of fights.
Very similar guys, them two. Got a lot of similar traits. Both travelled, both done ever so well. But Whereas Barroso is a very good Venezuelan boxer, Jorge Linares was a brilliant Venezuelan boxer and probably a first ballot Hall of Famer.
If he had better chin, God knows where he could have gone. I mean, he would just get knocked out by the most random people you could ever imagine. You know, it's supposed to be just a some sort of a turnover fight or something like that, and you're like, you got knocked out in a round. What the shit? Well, there goes my parlay.
I think Linares is still one of them guys that's been a free weight world champion, and he won all his titles on the road. Very, very good fighter, Jorge Linares. And if anybody wants to remind themselves how good Jorge Linares was, perhaps go back and watch him against Kevin Mitchell. And it was a very close fight, and Kevin was a very good fighter. But at the end of that fight, Jorge never had a mark on him because he knew he had to look after himself in a tough fight like that.
Well, and as Rob will remind people, even though he ended up losing in the 10th or 11th round, that fight between Linares and Lomachenko is boxing purest cocaine, basically.
It was beautiful, yeah, it was brilliant.
Yeah. So, he Venezuela, interesting guys. If they'd like to partake in being part of the rest of the world, God knows where their people could go. But that's another discussion for another day. Real quick note that I almost forgot. In the corner of Yoshiki Takei was former champion Akira Yagashi. Who was a hell of a good fighter in his own right. So I thought that was pretty interesting from the Japanese card, anything of all the random things I saw. But I caught highlights of this one. I figured this would end up as a stoppage. It was kind of an easy pick. But it looks like Mr. Camille Bala had a few moments of his own from the highlights that I saw, but Jin Sasaki eventually taking him out in the 7th round. The Sasaki can really bang. And did you see this fight, Des?
No, I never.
Oh my God!
I caught the last 3. So the ones we spoke about.
I just saw the highlight reel of it, and Sasaki, little badass that he is, pulled like a Roy Jones, Superman, both feet off the ground, knockout blow, like in a finish off Bala. It was ridiculous. My word. I think it might be in conversation for knockout of the year just because it was so ridiculous, just athletic. Sasaki is at 147 pounds now. So we'll see how he goes from here. But this guy can absolutely punch. He's got 17 knockouts in his 18 wins. And his only loss was to Japanese Andy. In a fight that I think he was probably supposed to make 140 pounds for, but he came in 144. So my hunch is that Sasaki was drained coming into that fight, and that is why he might have had struggles with Japanese Andy before he moved up to welterweight. So keep your eye on Jin Sasaki because this dude can punch and he's a lot of fun. Catch the highlights of that one, Des. It was a great
I will do, mate.
But anyhow, caught a couple of main events on Friday. I didn't watch everything that I could have, but there wasn't a whole lot I think that was worth seeing. I caught Jose Cepeda stopping Ivan Redkach in couple rounds, 3 rounds maybe. It went by fast. Lots of good body work by Zepeda. I don't know how much he has left, but whatever Redkach has left, he made Zepeda look $1 million out there. Look fast and strong. It was at 147 pounds. I'm sure they'll keep Zepeda around and try to feed him to a prospect. It was what it was. Nothing too interesting there. And also, Kevin Haler Brown, Cuban, I think it was in his 6th fight, beat John Bauza, dropped him with a hard body shot in the first, but just found his way towards the decision. Bauza had a few moments, but Brown just too accurate. I think there's just a lot of Lara in this kid. He might be an orthodox fighter, but he is definitely got a lot of Arslandy Lara about him. He is now, I think, 6-0 in his professional career, working his way up the ladder very quickly. And he actually has a win over the Quiet Storm, the deaf kid Julian Smith, earlier on in both of their careers. I think when Smith might have been 6-1 or 6-0 or something like that. So yeah, it's interesting goings on at 140 pounds there. You will definitely see more of Kevin Haler Brown, but he's not going to be a fan favorite. He's not bad by like not entertaining in his own way, but there's something to him, I guess. But anyhow, let's see here. And you caught a little bit of a card from the UK. What one did I say? Did I ask you if you could catch a few from?
Yeah, you asked me to look at the Brentwood card, which wasn't televised, and it was. I think it might have been shown on DAZN, but it was a small hall promoter, and the main event was Elliot Wow and Lloyd Germain. But I caught a young debutant, Harvey Smith, against Sean Jackson, and I like a debut. I like to see how they've transferred from the amateur to the pros. I like to see how they get on, whether it's over 4 or 6. It's a two-sided coin. This they gave Harvey Smith, the debutant kid, Sean Jackson, who is 0-23, so and 1 draw. So in 24 fights, no one's decided to get him a win, which I thought you'd have to break that up somehow. But he's managed to go 24 without winning a fight. But they did throw Harvey in over 6 rounds, so they want to get him going a bit quick. He was smiling, he was enjoying it, he was engaged with the crowd. All right, you can have that one. It's your debut, but I like to see him a little bit more focused now, a bit more professional, a bit more switched on. Take it a bit more seriously. When you're sitting down in the corner, it's all eyes on your trainer, and you listen to what he's got to say. I don't want to see you gesturing to the crowd. It's not a party. Professional boxing is a serious business. He's got a hands down style. He's quite fluid and lucid. He can switch a bit. It was a 6-round debut win on points. We'll see how Harvey goes from here. The main event, Elliot Wow against Lloyd Germain. It was pretty routine for Wow. I'll come to Wow in a minute. Lloyd has been matched hard. I mean, he got beat by Conor Walker in 3 rounds previously to this, and they've thrown him against Elliot Wow this time round. So he's not been matched particularly sensibly or favourably. He's had a hard couple of fights. From where Elliot Well's standing, it was a quick start from both guys. They was both throwing their punches, both letting their hands go. Germain had a nightmare second round, and he never really recovered. And then Elliot landed his right hand far too easily, and that's what stopped him in the third. Elliot Wow, you British fans will remember Lee Markham and Joe Mullender round about middleweight. And although Elliot's a welterweight, he reminds me of them guys. He's 11-0 with 7 stoppages. So he's got a very respectable record, but he's still area level. And props want to keep him there for another 2 or 3, see how he gets on. But at the moment, Elliot Wow is an area level fighter, English level fighter, and let's just see how that welterweight landscape works itself out over the next 3 or 4, and then perhaps they'll move Elliot up to British or Commonwealth level. But he's in no rush, and he's got a respectable record. He's not knocking over killers, and he isn't pulling up trees, but he ain't doing nothing wrong either.
How old about is he?
I don't know, Matty. I'll be guessing. He looks about 38, but he's probably about 27. But I don't know. I'm guessing.
Some of us grow up harder than others.
Yes.
He's got the face of a guy who has seen some shit.
But look, this is a kid. He's boxing off TV. He's boxing on small hall shows. He's building his career on probably 2 or 3 fights a year, and he's still a long way off being a British champion or winning a British title. So there's time and there's room, and he's doing nothing wrong. But like I say, if it reminds me a lot of a local kid that's building a record, similar to what Dave Allen did, similar to what Johnny Fisher's doing, but he's doing it with a lot more noise and a lot more publicity. They're building locally, and they're fighting kids that are never going to beat them. And then when they get there, we want to see what they're made of. And I'm not sure there's any serious money in Elliot. I'm not sure there's any serious push. But it's a bit like Josh Wow and guys like this. These guys are the heroes of the small hall shows. So we want to see if they can do a Josh Warrington. Can they go from small hall to the bigger card? Can they go to being a TV fighter? Can they go to winning and owning Lonsdale belts and progressing to European level? It's a very, very long journey. I go back to it. Elliot's done nothing wrong, but he's still got a lot to do.
Yeah, and I mean, if they're bringing him up this way, it sounds like they're doing the correct thing. His opponent sounds like he's been managed absolutely horribly, and this guy, it sounds like they're moving him along correctly. He's still got his and he's taking little steps up. And it's some people, have the background, the pedigree, and the abilities that they'll knock stuff out in 10 fights. That it might take a guy like this 20 fights, but it's all about the destination, right?
Well, look, so, the way matchmakers think and the way managers and promoters and trainers and fighters, they do these sums, they do the mathematics of it all. So Conor Walker stopped Lloyd Jermaine in 3 in his last fight. But Conor Walker's gone and had a fight of the year against Lewis Crocker. Could have won it. So the Elliot Whale people are thinking, if you can do a better job on Lloyd than what Conor did, that kind of puts you, we've got a gauge. So that's the way they play in it. So unfortunately, Lloyd's he's had 2 hard fights, but he went into last night 9-2, but he's not a puncher. So they've picked him for a reason. But now they'll balance Elliot's performance against Lloyd against Conor Walker's performance against Lloyd. So they're kind of finding their way in this division, and it's always going to be a very talented division 147 domestically, whether it's Europe or internationally. So they're managing Elliot quite well, but we'll see what the next 3 or 4 fights bring.
Could you see him fighting Conor Walker?
No, I think he'll get beat. But having said that, he's right hand happy. He likes letting his hands go. But Conor Walker can punch, and Conor Walker's very proactive, very aggressive. I think the Conor Walker that fought Lewis Crocker beats the Elliot Well I saw last night. But a lot can happen in 18 months. And if you keep ticking over, if you keep bubbling, who knows the sort of fighter you can become in 18 months and the sort of fighter that other person can drop to. So, like I said, I think he needs 12, 18 months of progressive tickovers. And that's every opponent's better than the last one, but it's like the Japanese do. It's still very calculated. So I think that's how you got to look at Elliot Well. He's a young kid. He's a local kid. When I say young, I mean young in boxing terms. He's had 11 pro fights, so he's still in that sort of area level type range. He's local. I think we've got to see what the next 18 months mean for him. Perhaps Conor Walker's a step too far.
Well, yeah, we'll see where they move him along. Maybe it's sometimes they also decide that somebody doesn't have it, and they feed them to somebody with because there's a nice shiny record on their own, right? So
timing's everything in boxing, isn't it, Matty? If you can just, and the reason I'm talking so much about this is because whenever you go to a small hall show and you see a kid that's got 10-0, 11-0, he's a reasonable puncher, and he can pick up an area belt, and then from an area belt pick up an English belt, and then now I'm looking at British titles now, I'm Commonwealth titles, and once you've got them, you really are reaching out to a big audience. So you kind of find yourself when you watch a small hall show or you're at a small hall show, you kind of find yourself, if you know boxing and you know the business, plotting their journey. And I'm trying to plot Elliot's journey. So he's not someone that's pulling up loads of trees. He's not come off a GB squad. He hasn't got a really fashionable, trendy trainer. He's not got a deal with a network. But he's going along nicely, and the next 18 months will be interesting for him.
Well, I'm sure we'll see him pop up on another one of these cards in 2-3 months, probably too. They seem to move these guys along pretty well at this stage over there. So,
can I ask you a question, Matty?
Sure.
Right? In a country of 50 states, and each state is like a country, and you've got 450 million people, do you get boxers like this? Do you get guys that have off TV, they're ticking along nicely, but the breakthrough from the step from that to where they need to be on a big top rank card or a golden boy card or a PBC card is huge? Do you have guys? Do you ever see guys like in America? You think, how are they going to make the step?
So the problem, like in the you have all your area titles and domestic belts and stuff like that, and
it gives us a gauge. It gives us a gauge, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's not very common for guys to come up without being noticed by big promoters and things like that. So like, you never like really see anybody who ends up fighting in on a DAZN card or whatever it might be, whose path involved winning a state championship, even though they do exist in certain states with, because each state has their own athletic commissions and stuff. So I think one of the last guys who might have done it kind of that way and got to some bigger fights, even though he didn't excel on the big stage. Do you remember Brian Minto?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Yeah, fought Marco Huck and a few others, but yeah, I think he came up kind of that way in West Virginia. And there's another guy looking at, Tommy Carpensi might have had a little bit of that path too. He's fighting, oddly enough, I haven't even looked at this card, in New Zealand. Ryan Deal, we're expecting you to be our on the ground reporter. So they brought Tommy Carpensi over to New Zealand to fight David Nika. I don't know who David Nika is. I've never heard that name in my life. But I was staring at that name and I'm like, yeah, Tommy might have come out that way too. Yeah, actually, I think maybe that Cornflake Lamana guy might be like, because on the East Coast, a few of those states have it like that. But yeah, the big promoters just have too many chances to get an eye on these kids before they get into into any place where they would get like have that kind of journey, it seems. So I don't know.
So for example, so let's just say you've got a state, and out of that state you've got a 1 and 2, and that 1 and 2 they go down to wherever it is, Palm Springs, for the national training squads, and they're invested now, and they're going around the world, whether it's the Pan Americans or these multinations, they're going around the world. What happens to the good kid that's 4 or 5 in the state? Or the good kid that didn't quite get the decisions in the amateurs, turned over without a lot of state titles, any state titles, pretty much like our Cuban guy that's sort of never won a national title in Cuba, never been in a major championship, but he's really excelling in the pros. He's gone over to Germany to do it. Where does that kid in America go?
Funny enough, his name is Terrence Crawford.
And what, Terrence didn't win that state titles, or he didn't win a Pan Americans, or
he didn't make it onto the Olympic squad. I mean, he had some national titles and stuff like that, but he just kind of went under the radar when he went pro. And his fight with Bradis Prescott was, I think, his first fight with Top Rank, and he came in late notice. Prescott was supposed to fight somebody totally different.
Right.
Crawford came in at like 2 weeks notice, and then he was able to get the powers that be behind him and get him the opportunities. But yeah, that's kind of the story of Terrence Crawford.
Yeah, interesting. I find American boxing, from amateurs to pros, for the kids that weren't standout, I find it fascinating, particularly when you talk about how vast America is, with the 50 states and the 450 million people. You think, where does the 3rd or 4th kid go? How do they get noticed? And I'm trying to think of the guys now that we've seen that have built these brilliant records, but they've never come out of their state as pros. So they've had like 25-0 or 30-0, and then when they step up, they get beat. But I wonder where that kid goes. Like, say, for example, the John Ryder in America, where does he go? But I think you've just answered it.
Yeah, well, and it was in the United States. Maybe he was from Texas, but I think he was from Juarez, Mexico. There was a heavyweight named David Rodriguez who built up a record of like 35-0 before fighting anybody with a pulse. You know,
Yes, you
And
do
it's
get a
just-
lot of we get a lot of them in America, don't we? Because you don't leave your state. You know, you might have a guy that says, "No, I've boxed in Michigan, you know, for 25, 30 fights," and we don't quite know how good they are.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Like the only equivalent, like of where that kind of seems to happen, like you can't get away with that in the UK, like on the area
No, you
level or
can't.
whatever,
No,
you'll
you
get
can't.
found out. But like if you're, fighting in some former Soviet country in Eastern Europe, you get some of those guys, and you see them in a ring when they finally get into the rankings against somebody that kind of matters, and you're like, how the hell did they find 35 people for this guy
Yeah.
to beat? And you go
Correct.
through their record, and it's
Yeah.
been they fought their entire career in Bulgaria against guys who were like 2-26.
I remember someone saying to me once that, guys, we've had really good fighters like Clinton Woods, who was a really good fighter. And perhaps in America, he'd have been lost. We wouldn't have got out of the state because we're such a we're a microcosm of you guys. So we've got that lovely journey of you win an area belt. So now you're on the map. Now you step up to British title, Commonwealth title, European title. You're on the map. But sometimes, to pick up what you said there, exactly right. You can have 30, 25, 30, 35 fights in your own state, and there's no gauge, there's no measure to tell us how good you are. So we don't really know until you turn up on a big show or you've been put in with someone that's a real hot prospect, and you've got this brilliant 25-0, 30-0 record. But then we find out, no, you're not as good as we thought. But the opposite side to that is we could lose kids as well, because there's some really good kids that don't win state titles. There's some good kids that come third or fourth. That, for example, over here, if George Groves and James DeGale box each other in the first round in the national championships, someone's got to go out. But where does that kid go in America? Because it's such a big country. That was the point I was trying to make.
Well, and it's such an issue, I think, of confidence and stuff for a lot of these guys too. If you go through BoxRec, you will find it littered with people who retire with one loss on their career, never to be seen again. And it's just, they were brought up the wrong way. They ran into an experienced opponent who just sucked their confidence away from them, and they never got it back. They might have went back in the gym, but they were gun shy, and they didn't like the way they were holding the shot anymore, and they just gave it up.
I told this story before. A friend of mine was a really good amateur, and he never had a style he never had that point scoring style. And although he won titles in the amateurs, he was never really going to be sent around the world, because his style would have been found out over at the time it was 4-2s. So he turned pro with Frank Maloney. And I remember the conversation. Frank Maloney said, "I've got you an opponent. He's an ex-footballer, never boxed." And he got beat. The ex-footballer beat him. But that ex-footballer was Wayne Ilcock, who went on to have a really good career. So and my friend never boxed again. And so sometimes you can run into the wrong opponent at the wrong time. That's a very good point. It's a good story, mate.
Yeah, and but and the thing about it is, when it happens to them, though, it shows. And it's nothing against them as people. It's just against them as a boxer. It shows that they just don't have something when it comes to the mental strength that it takes to keep going. There's guys who end up like retiring 11-1 because they took that defeat, and then there's guys who win a championship when they're 30-7. And there's guys who keep basically a 500 record, and they go in there and they love every minute of it, like Emmanuel Augustus, right? And they just, because there's people who are born to be boxers, and there's people who just happen to find their way into a ring for a period of time, and it's very different.
Michael Bent, former WBO heavyweight champion of the world, he was an outstanding amateur in America. I think he medaled at the Worlds, and I think he won a Pan American. And when he turned over, I think he won 5 national titles as an amateur in America. And he turned over with Manny Stewart, and I think he lost his debut. and he put it down. And he picked it back up years later and won a world title. But you're quite right. Sometimes you just run into the wrong opponent.
Yeah, I think. I mean, Bernard Hopkins lost his debut fight. I think Juan Manuel Marquez lost his. You know, there's all sorts of guys who went that way, and so there's just a certain desire in some people to, like, I'm, gonna make this happen, and some of it is, an intent desire to make something out of boxing, and some people is they have nowhere else to go. If they're not doing something in the ring, what are they gonna do? Go cook burgers, or or sling tacos, as your country might be, fried chips, whatever, whatever. It's, they're like, no, I'll just keep fighting. And the thing, like, and I don't know what the purses are like for a lot of these guys. You guys have a lot of those real like trial horse guys who are just there for fighters as they're coming up. The guys that have like a record of like 12-92, and it, like, I don't know what they get paid to do what they do, and I don't know if they get paid for their gym work. I don't know how that whole financial structure works for them, but most of them, it seems like in some way or another they make their living as boxers.
Well, that's it. Well, I'll tell you. So a lot of these journeymen make more money than the prospects, because
really,
because a journeyman might fight 4 rounders and get paid $2,000. So you get £2,000 for a 4-rounder, but you're being brought in not to beat the prospect. But the deal is, I'm not going to let this prospect stop me. So you get out maybe 3 times that month. Now you're earning, say, 4 to 6 grand a month. Now, if you times it over 12, you want a good yearly income. Now, if you do that over 5 years, it's a good return.
And that's why they get so pissed off when they get stopped standing up, because then they have to take the required break.
They take a month off, and it hits their numbers. And if you ever look at the best journeyman out of them, we've got some brilliant journeymen. Like, so in British boxing, journeymen are really well respected because we know what they do for the game, and we know how important they are to the game. Try to explain the role of a journeyman to someone that doesn't know boxing. They can't believe it. Like, they're so used to sports being competitive. When you say this guy's been brought in, he's not really going to win. In fact, if this journeyman looked like he was beating this guy that sold 300 tickets and has come out the amateurs with 3 or 4 national titles, the promoter might give the corner a funny look and say, "What's he doing?" And that has happened in the past. Journeymen are not there to. I've seen promoters go up to cornermen and I've lip read them and said, "What's your guy think he's doing? If he wants to be and work on one of my shows again, he'll stop hitting my kid." That's the role of the journeyman. You're there to give the kid rounds. Now,
so let me ask you a question here real quick. So when you see these guys with those journeyman records, and they got 25 losses in a row, and then there's some like random KO2, is that because they said, "Fuck it, I'll surpass a paycheck for the next month. This kid pissed me off. I'm beating the shit out of him"?
No. So the British Boxing Board of Control will intervene if a kid has got too many losses on his record. So what you tend to do is you tend to say, "Look, we're going to lose 15, 16 fights on the road, but then we're going to get you a win." So you put that journeyman against another journeyman, and it's almost like a handshake deal. Our guy's going to win because he needs a win on his record to keep the Board of Control off his back.
And he'll probably take a short purse that night then, right?
Correct. It's just getting him out and getting him a W, right? So now he can keep rolling on to getting his 3 losses every month. But then 3 losses come maybe 1,500 to 2.5 grand a fight, times 3 a month. But don't forget as well, a journeyman sometimes might fluctuate from 4 weights. So sometimes the trainer might get a phone call saying, "Our guy's pulled out. We really need to save this show. Our kid sold a lot of tickets. Can your guy step in?" And we're going, "Well, hold on, it's 2 weights what we're normally boxing at. I'll give you X amount." So if you're used to getting 2 grand a fight, the promoter might say, "How about I give you 4,300 just to save the show? And I'll break even tonight rather than have to give all the money back and do my deposits." So sometimes that can happen. So when you're a journeyman, you're hanging around and you're floating around and you're taking 2, 3 fights a month. And it's a really good income. And you think, over the course of 5 years, You're not going to compete with some of these guys that are fighting for world titles, or some of these guys who've got big contracts. We're not saying that, but for a lot of these prospects that are having to sell tickets, having to train hard, having to fight live opponents when they get outside of the journeyman stage, trying to win area titles and English titles. Sometimes you look at the journeyman, and like there's been loads of stories where journeymen have got like a really good property portfolio, or they're turning up to their fights in really flash motors because they're the ones that are earning the money at that stage. So there's over in the UK, we really hold journeymen in very high regard.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting because, I mean, you could feasibly make between probably, 50 and 80,000 pounds a year doing that.
Yeah, 100 grand a year, 150 grand a year. Yeah. So some of these journeymen have got 300 fights under their belt. Some of them have got 200 bouts, and they're really good fighters and know how to look after themselves. If you got in the ring with them, you wouldn't land a clean punch. And then you measure them. You say, let's look at the real good fighters like the Nigel Benns and the Nazim Hammers that could crack. And then you measure and you see the guys that they boxed, and they managed to stop the journeyman that's never been stopped in 100 fights. You think, right, that's when you know you've got a real good one. But most journeymen really know how to look after themselves. Most journeymen turn pro thinking, I'll have a good career. And then after 4 or 5 fights, realise it ain't going to happen for me. So I'm going to go into journeyman mode. And that's when you sort of you taper your training accordingly, and you take fights accordingly, and you realise, do you know what? There's no ego in this for me. I'm not selling tickets. I'm not running around trying to please everybody. I'm not trying to take on the next line coming along. I'm literally going to turn up, do 4 or 6 rounds, pick up my money, and I'll be out again in 10 days, 14 days.
And you probably wouldn't want to spar too much at that point in time just because you wouldn't want to take much damage. You probably would just want to stay, as you said, you fight 3 or 4 different weight classes. So you just do your best to kind of stay in
They
fighting
do body
shape.
sparring. They do body sparring. And they're not on their toes. They're not being proactive. They're not looking for gaps, setting traps. It's a complete different mindset, but it's one to be respected. We'll never ever disrespect a journeyman on this pod, because people in Britain, we really respect our journeymen. We know how hard they work. We know what they go through, and we know how important they are to the game. But anyone that's been involved in boxing knows a good journeyman is probably, it's very hard to gauge, top to bottom of boxers in this country. But in terms of financial rewards and what they're earning, journeymen they're pitched right in the middle. They're doing well. A good journeyman does very well in boxing in this country.
Yeah, you move well, you keep a high guard, and you live to fight another day.
Correct. Exactly what they do.
Yeah, and then and then there's just some guys that play that role differently. Again, you gotta love Emmanuel Augustus. He's one of those people where if he ever got a real training camp and he wanted to get a win, he'd probably beat you.
Yeah, he wasn't a journeyman. He was a good fighter, and he fought, and good fighters beat him. So we have similar. I think someone mentioned Yosef Al Hamaldi, and guys like Peter McDonough, and I'm trying to think of them. They're not journeymen. They're really good fighters, but they've not been managed properly. They've not had the opportunities. Perhaps they've not sold enough tickets, and for whatever reason, their record don't reflect how good they are. But them guys are good fighters, and they become gatekeepers. So, you get someone like a Peter McDonough, they say, well, we're going to put you in with Peter to see how good you really are, because you're talking about fighting for European titles and retaining British titles and moving on. You've got to beat the likes of Peter McDonough to prove to us that you're worth investing in. And if you're not as good as they say you are, a guy like Peter McDonough will find you out, which he has done. He's beaten many a good kid. So they're not journeymen. They're good fighters, and their records don't suggest it. But if you know boxing, you know how good they are. But it's quite a few of them. And, boxing, I remember when Danny Williams boxed Julius Francis, and they kind of pitched 3 fights before that. They pitched Julius as a journeyman, but he wasn't. He was just a good fighter that was fighting much better fighters than him. But if you put him level, gave him 12 weeks, you've got a hard fight in front of you. And Julius went on to have a really good career, winning British and Commonwealth titles. So there's loads of them in British boxing. So you have the journeyman, you have a gatekeeper, you have a prospect, you have a contender.
Yeah, and it's funny. I was just thinking, it's funny. It's hard when you think of Nassim Ahmed to say, can you compare anybody else? Say anybody had a style kind of like that? And the Emmanuel Augustus, you honestly, I'm sorry to go back to that one. You honestly can't actually say that. And it was almost when they were on their game entirely, it's almost like they fought to like a hip hop rhythm, wasn't it? It was just, it was their own thing, and it was like playing in their head, and you're just their unwilling dance partner. It was it was fun to watch.
We had similar to Emmanuel Augustus, not in style, but in out the box technique, wacky thinking, and it was Peter Obo. And if anyone doesn't remember Peter Obo, he was a British and Commonwealth light heavyweight champion. And there's a fabulous story, goes back to the Lennox Lewis gym, where I think Vasily Girov, who was the brilliant Olympic champion and cruiserweight champion before he ran into James Toney, he was working with, I think it was Jeff Fennick, and Girov's sparring partner never turned up. And Peter Obo was sleeping upstairs in one of the dormitories. And they woke Peter up and said, come down, we need some sparring. And Peter gave Vasily a really good hiding over 5 rounds. Literally kicked the living daylights out of him. So they're the type of guy, and that's sort of it. That's an Emmanuel Augustus story. Well, who does God rest his soul? Who does Roger Mayweather say that Floyd's hardest opponent was?
He's Emmanuel Augustus.
Yeah, because real knows real, and he gets it, and he remembers where Floyd was physically and mentally at that time. And he said the Emmanuel Augustus fight turned Floyd into a man. It made him realize this is the type of guy you've got to beat to get where you need to be. I totally get that. I understand that point. Our one was Peter Obo. Very similar thing.
Yeah, and I mean Floyd turned it up in that fight. Like there wasn't a whole heap and load of guys who got a clean stoppage over Augustus, but he really turned it on, and he was landing some clean shots down the stretch. And Augustus was a hard guy to land clean on. I mean, you might have outworked him probably because he let you, because he was brought in as opponent. And again, he wanted to be able to work the next month in the case of how things kind of work in the United States, I think, but he wasn't going to let you hit him clean. He was always rolling everything. And he's slipping straight punches. Fun guy to watch. Some fighters fight with a rhythm, like a real rhythm, and I think they can hear it in their heads whether they say it or not, and they just start moving to it in their own way, and you can't catch up to it because you're not hearing the same song in your head.
If you go against the guys like Peter Obo, like Emmanuel Augustus, if you've been looked after, if they've paved the way for you, if you've got any type of fragility, mentally, physically, emotionally, if you can go into the 6th round of a 10-round fight behind on the cars and not knowing how you're going to do this, they're the wrong guys to be boxing against, because they're utterly ruthless and they're teak tough, and they've got this demonic presence about them, where like they're not going away. You're not going to out tough them. You're not going to out fight them. You're not going to out strong them. They were them gatekeepers we're talking about, Matty, that if you're going to get to that next level, you've got to get past this guy. They're perfect examples of it. Emmanuel Augustus and Peter Obo.
Well, they create some absolute gems of fights when you over the years too. Augustus, when he was still Emmanuel Burton, when he fought Mickey Ward, that was a war.
Yeah, I agree.
So, but anyhow, I'm trying to think. We got maybe, I think we can start getting these. So there's a handful of different fights going on this week here. Let's see here. We have a pro box card going on Wednesday. This one, I think this one is going to be the goods, at least on paper here. Got Lester Martinez. He's a Guatemalan puncher. He beat Carlos Gongora in his last fight. He's taken on Joshawn James, who's 9-0-2. His draws against pretty decent competition, though. He's also a puncher. I think he's got 8 stoppages to his credit. You got Vladimir Hernandez, who is always capable of a win, except for at the very highest levels. He's going in against Raul Garcia, who is 13-1-1. He might have the better record, but he might not come away with the W there. He's a puncher too, 11 KOs to his credit there. Let's see here. His last fight was a split decision loss to Leonardo Ruiz. Oh, that was on a Pro Box card there. But that was last year. He's been out of the ring for an entire year. He also has a draw to Robert Terry, who has been in that overtime boxing tournament, who I actually thought won his match against the Greek Cat, but unfortunately took a defeat there. So that's a very interesting fight on paper as well there. Let's see here. Jacob Gomez, 10-0-1, taking on Jerry Perez. Jerry Perez, despite his 14-4-1 record, he's a pretty quality fighter. He is 0-3-1 in his last 4, though. Let's see who those all been against this year. Again, another fighter who hasn't fought since last year. Yeah, he lost to Justin Paldo on Pro Box. That's right. I got stopped by him, which was uncommon for him because he's usually been pretty steady. Michel Rivera. Yeah, he's fought. He lost to Jojo Diaz. That's almost embarrassing at this point in time. Diaz has definitely seen better days, so that one might not be as good there. Gomez with 1 draw on his record, only no defeats. Let's see here, who draw much earlier in his career here. Yeah, I would think. I mean, unless Jerry had a problem that he's resolved, I think that one might be decided there. Oh, shit. Shit. Oh, there we go. Thank God. Are you the? Can you hear me again?
Go on, mate. You can hear you.
Okay, I'm having some problems here. Too many windows and stuff is going crazy on me. So
we can hear you,
God,
we can hear you, mate. Can you hear me?
Okay, thank God. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, mate.
Fortunately, yeah, I can't close any windows here. There we go. Thank God. Okay, I think we might have actually cleared that one. My God, FoxRec runs too many damn scripts. I'll tell you that much. But so that was worrisome there for a minute. Good God. That is going to be a good Pro Box card there on Wednesday. You guys can check it out when you wake up on Thursday morning there. Let's see here. Going to have a DAZN card. It's a Dimitri Salita card that's going to have Ardreal Holmes against Hugo Noriega on that one. And that one, despite Noriega being 2-2 in his last 4 fights, it's been against pretty decent competition, and he's a Cuban fighter. Ardreal Holmes, not much of a puncher there, and you get into a boxing match with a Cuban, you might be in some trouble there. So we'll see how that one goes. A little bit of an interesting main event there. Also, Joseph Hicks, 10-0, taking on another 10-2 fighter in Roy Austin. So Salita, that's better than what he's been putting on in some of his recent midweek cards. Those the matchmaking on those has been less than stellar. This is definitely a step up, in my opinion, for Dimitri. So glad to see that one. This card is under the radar, and I hope you guys will put it on your radar because I think it's going to be pretty good. We have a fight on here between undefeateds, Julio Porras Ruiz against Isaac Torres, 11-0 versus 10-0. That could be an interesting one. We have 23-0 Sergio Mendoza Cordova against Angel Ramos Serrano, who is 32-1-2 and is apparently undefeated in his last 6 fights here at flyweight. But that is all just appetizer for this main event, which I think could be an absolute banger. We got Eduardo Rocky Hernandez taking on Thomas Matisse, who has been in there with some very, very good fighters, is quite a puncher in his own right. I think that this fight is going to be potentially, even considering the big pay-per-view card on Saturday, Des, I think this could end up being the fight of the week.
Yeah, I think so. I think it looks good. I'm going to let you talk about this, Matt, because this is your territory, and I want to hear what you've got to say about the main event.
Well, my concern with Hernandez is a little bit is that he's just looked a little bit slower recently. He was never the fastest fighter, but he has looked a little bit slower. Like that fight with Foster really took something out of him.
Sorry to interrupt. And I've asked you to tell us about it, but
Sure.
do you think the Foster result, because he was meant to win that one, and that was built. I mean, I remember Eddie talking about that fight. It was laid on for Hernandez. Do you think that getting beat that night in front of his own crowd, on his own soil, selling as many tickets as he did, do you think that would have affected him?
Oh yeah, I think that was a tough one to come back from. He did have a W his last time out, but if I recall, it was a pretty difficult fight. Let me go back and see if
he's not looked comfortable since the Foster fight.
Yeah, let's see here. Yeah, he fought against Daniel Lugo. Yeah, I don't remember that he looked that fantastic in that fight. I know
he didn't.
Got a
he didn't. He was going through he was going through the motions, and he didn't look like come out of first gear. But I just wonder, because sometimes a fighter like Foster, and we've spoken about kids that were never fancied, kids that come out of the state third or fourth or choice, and they somehow circumnavigate to the top again. And I think Foster is one of them guys. And I think Hernandez was laid on to beat Foster, and he had he really dropped the ball in that night. And I just wonder, will he struggle to recapture the type of promise that a lot of people thought he had?
I think, let me tell you this one. I haven't seen the odds for this one yet. I don't think they're out at this point in time. But I'm actually going to say that Matisse beats him. So Matisse, and he's an interesting fighter. I mean, he can box a bit. He's pretty lanky for the weight. He's 5'9", but he's got a 73-inch reach. You know, I mean, that's just over 6 foot. He's a sizable 130-pound fighter, and the defeats on his career, he lost a UD to Luis Melendez, who was 16-1. At the time. I don't know what he's done since then. I'm trying to think. Maybe the name rings a bell. He lost a majority decision to Isaac Cruz, and he lost a unanimous decision to Will Madera. Two of those cards by 75-77. So, I mean, that was a round away from a draw. So, I mean, he and that was, 5 years ago, and he's a more capable fighter now, I think. I mean, 34, I mean, he might not be a little bit past his prime, but he can punch a bit. And this run he's on is pretty good. He, a couple of nondescript wins, but after the Melendez fight, but then he beat the undefeated Christian Tapia, and then he beat the undefeated Ramiro Cesena, coming back to win by a 10th round TKO down on all 3 cards. And then after doing that, he beat Cesar Juarez, who is a capable fighter who's been in with a lot of good opponents, taking him in the last round of their fight too. So I don't know. I really could see an upside. I think that he's going to be the underdog, but I could see Matisse being an upset winner here. I really could.
I agree with everything you just said there. And if you look at Matisse's record, I'll ask that question in a minute. But if you look at his record, there's a lot of narrow losses there that could have gone the other way. And even the Isaac Cruz one, that was a majority decision over 10. So I think the only thing he hasn't got going for him, he doesn't seem to be, he seems to be someone that can be got at. Now, I don't know if Hernandez is that guy to get at him, but this is going to be a tough test for Hernandez. What's Cleveland like as a boxing area, Matty? Where did Sean Porter come from? Do you recall?
I don't remember where Sean Porter came from, but I mean, you got to think like the greater Ohio area. I mean, that's Jared Anderson, Adrian Broner, Robert Easter. I mean, even in the Youngstown is Kelly Pavlik. So it's there's plenty of good fighters there.
A hotbed. It's a hotbed. They've got quite a high bar in Ohio, haven't they? I'm certain. Someone in the chat can correct me. I'm certain Sean Porter and Kenny Porter come from Ohio as well. That's why they knew Adrian Broner so well. They come from the same place, the same state.
That
I'm
would make
almost
sense
convinced of
because
it. Yeah,
that would make sense because I don't think like they would talk to him like willingly otherwise. Like it must have
yeah.
been their
No.
neighbors.
So the point I'm making is Matisse he's no mug. He's a mature age. He's had some hard fights. He's fought some good kids. He's lost some very close ones that could have gone the other way. Yeah, I think if Hernandez is anything like I saw last time out, and if he drops the ball like he did against O'Foster, I think this could be one that could catch him out. I totally agree with you.
Yeah, and I think it'll be fun, but while it lasts, I could see both guys touching canvas again. Like I said, I think that this is going to potentially be the fight of the week here, but we'll see. That's going to be coming up on DAZN on Friday, and I'm gonna try to hold off on the Canelo card just for a bit here because Ames said he's coming. He's headed back home. I don't know how long of a drive that is, but hopefully it's a short one. So I'm just kind of pulling a couple of things out of the hat from this week. One is that the Johnny Fisher is not going to be fighting his fight against Rodchenko, and is this like the third time that this fight has been pulled?
I don't know. He'll still be on the card. He'll still be on the show because he's such a ticket seller and they're building him. But yeah, perhaps they've got to move past this one now. Maybe I said this before. Look, the Johnny Fisher story is a good one, and it's an exciting one, and it's one we can all get behind. This is what Billy Walker looks like in 2024. He's a ticket seller. He's not afraid to put himself out there. He's got people around him that are banging the drum and they're doing all types of weird and wacky marketing and promoting. The hardest thing to do with Johnny Fisher is to get him rounds because you've got to try and match make it so that he's got the advantage over the opponent, but we don't want him to keep blasting kids out in the first 2 or 3 rounds because when Johnny Fisher gets there, we need to know that he's capable of getting over 10 into the 12-round fighting range. We need to know that if he's behind on the cards, he's got it in the locker to turn it around. When someone hits him on the whiskers, what are they going to be like? What's his legs going to be like? So there's so much we've got to find out about Johnny Fisher. Yes, it's exciting. Yes, it's going to be a fun ride. Nothing against the kid at all. He seems, he's a good trainer in a good gym. I like the promotion behind him. It's not my cup of tea, and I don't get involved in all that type of stuff, but I get it. You're banging a drum for your kid. But the hardest thing to do with Johnny Fisher is to get him experience, to get him rounds. Rodchenko would have done that, but unfortunately he's pulled out. So maybe they've got to move past that now. You on mute, Matty.
And I was gonna say, like, do you think that he's nearing any point in his career where he could compete with the winner of Wardley and Clark the rematch?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. No, nowhere near. I think Johnny Fisher is going to be that unique boxer that needs 30 fights before he fights for a British title, and it's not unusual. They might bypass domestic boxing, similar to what they've done with Conor Benn. They might bypass it, and that will upset a lot of British fight fans that who want to see fighters go the traditional route because it's our measuring stick, Matty. It's what we gauge kids on. I think I might have got some details wrong. People, I'm here to be corrected. But when Johnny Fisher won the area title, we boxed a kid called Harry Armstrong, and Harry Armstrong's the type of opponents you want for Johnny Fisher. They're going to get you into the 7, 8, 9 round territory. They're going to take your shot, learn from it, and you're not going to land that shot again for another 2 or 3 rounds. You've got to find other punches. You've got to pull other things out of the book. You've got to start thinking. And that's what you need for Johnny Fisher. The problem is, at domestic level, there ain't loads of kids like that. So you're bouncing from one extreme to the other. And I think if you're going to pitch it at what you just said, Clark and Wardley, David Adelaide, Etoma, no, them guys are nowhere. They're on another planet to Johnny Fisher. And that's not to be disrespectful. It's just where Johnny Fisher is at the moment. A good fight for Johnny Fisher, and I think me and a couple of lads have spoke about this before, you kind of want to get Johnny Fisher in it to make it, recognisable for people. Someone like Nick Webb, someone's going to turn up and give you 3 good rounds. And then Johnny Fisher's got to navigate through them 3 rounds and see what you can do in the next 3. So you might get 5 to 6 rounds out of Nick Webb. Then you want to pull out someone like a Dave Allen, someone who's going to turn up, if he gets 10 weeks notice, is going to turn up in reasonable shape and he's going to give you 6 to 8 rounds. And if you're not at your best, he might tag you. So that's how you know, and then you've got to look at a Solly Dakers, at the guys that have won domestic titles. And then you've got to look at maybe like I don't know, if you've done Nick Webb, Dave Allen, Solly Dakers, then we can talk about maybe a David Adelaide. Where is he sitting at the moment? Then you can talk about if you've come for all of them, let's look at a British title if you haven't already got one. And let's look at maybe who's just outside the European level. But it's a long journey for Johnny Fisher. And I said it so many times, the hardest part will be getting rounds for him. So they're going to bring in guys that are going to be durable, someone that's going to stand up for 6 to 8 rounds. And you're not going to throw a lot back, but you'll keep Johnny thinking. But they're very hard to come by, these guys.
Yeah, you're really choosing from a really narrow pool of fighters at that point in time.
You are. And then, sorry, Matty, but whenever you go British, the kids want to beat Johnny Fisher. They fancy it. You know, that they fancy it. So if you said to Dave Allen, you've got Johnny Fisher in 12 weeks, Dave Allen will fancy that. Now, I'm not saying Dave Allen should beat Johnny Fisher. It all stacks in Johnny Fisher's favour. But they've got to take that risk, haven't they? The people behind Johnny Fisher have got to take the risk with him. And that's what's when you're juggling balls like this, to bring up a heavyweight who sells an awful lot of tickets, who might be able to sell out, you know, a small football stadium in the next 2 years. If you get the right fight, you want to do it just right. And matchmaking is the hardest part of this.
Well, if he does have a torn bicep, I mean, I don't think we're going to see him fight for the rest of this year, probably. Fisher, that is.
Correct.
So
Correct.
It's, you don't want to waste too much time in your career, but it's not good when a fighter's body is breaking down at a young age. I don't think, he's not even 25, is he?
No, let's assume he went to school, he went to college, he done a university. I don't know how old he is, if I'm perfectly honest, but you've got to assume he's 24, 25, 26 as a guess.
Yeah, it's not good when your body's breaking down like that at a young age and stuff. Because I mean, something like a bicep, I mean, that's probably not even your body breaking down. That's probably overtraining, training incorrectly, lifting incorrectly. All those kind of things. Throwing a punch incorrectly.
I tore my bicep once because someone put their elbow up and it just cut through my bicep. It can happen, and there will be a period of recovery. He's got to repair. You've got to recover. You've got to get fit. So he's probably lost this year, unless they get him out in December. I mean, it's only 3 or 4 months away now. December, it comes so quick. It's probably not going to happen this year. And then again, you bring in someone in that's going to get knocked over in the first round, and you're wasting camps on these knockover jobs. And I just don't think that. I've always said it, for a kid like Johnny Fisher, the hardest thing to do is matchmaking, because you're trying to look after something that's very precious. He's a white heavyweight who sells an awful lot of tickets, who looks like he can punch. You've got to protect that. Boxing promoters will want to protect that, but it's very hard to matchmake them along the way.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking. That's come up a few times today. The art of matchmaking, and it really is an art. So
but we sorry to interrupt you, mate. We talk about, people have said Derek Chisora's passed it. They won't put Johnny Fisher nowhere near Derek Chisora. Many people have said, derisory things about Simon Keane. They won't put Johnny Fisher near Simon Keane. Hughie Fury. He's the forgotten man of boxing. They won't put him nowhere near Hughie Fury. So where do you put Johnny Fisher? Where do you put him? If they won't put Johnny Fisher near David Adelaide. So you're looking at maybe the likes of the Nathan Gormans or the Cash Alleys. Fair enough, but he's still of a level. And if I'm wrong, I hope I'm proven wrong. But for the next 12 months, I can't see him coming past the Dave Allens, the Cash Allies, the Nathan Gormans. And that's if we get to see them fights.
I almost think when it comes to judging prospects, have you ever seen the movie The Jerk with Steve Martin in 1980?
No.
It's fantastic. He's getting ready to head off to the big city, and his dad tells him, "This is shit, and this is Shinola." So you got to know the difference between shit and Shinola. So we might have a segment on the show for every couple of months when it comes to prospects. Call it shit and Shinola. Rob, what do you think about that one? Shit and Shinola. Is that the way we should judge prospects?
Whatever the fuck you're going on about, yeah.
Are you eating a sandwich?
No, I'm eating hot chili nuts. Pause.
I didn't know that they brought flavor to Ireland. I'm glad to hear that.
I brought all the flavor to Ireland, baby.
Well, we also might have Ames joining us. He's trying to make it. I think we spread it out. I'm going to go through the people in the chat here. Thank them for stopping in. Got Captain Casual, Ray, Alan C, MB. Let's see here. All them, Paul Rafferty in there. Take Ames, obviously. Let's see here. Thomas Newman stopping by. Yimmy Yappy. Jan M. Just asking where everybody went, though. Simon Hill. Porky's Corner. Possibly a fake Porky's Corner account. We're hoping. Let's see here. Welshmere's in there as well. M. Lithgow. I don't know if I said him. Michael Thompson. Beat Bob Boop as well. Yeah, so we thank everybody for dropping in the chat there today. Rob, were you able to catch Inoue?
Someone managed to catch him. He's fucking magic, like, isn't he? Can't say I'm surprised by the result of the outcome.
Ireland wasn't in a state of shock.
I don't think most of Ireland knew the fucking thing was happening, to be honest with you.
That's a shame.
It is a shame. It's a real shame. We spoke about it before for Doheny that the man on the street doesn't even know who he is, that way. Like, it's and he definitely hasn't obviously crossed over to the casual market. So, but while he can operate at world level, there's difference between world class and world level. Like, an Inoue is world class fighter, like fucking rightfully in the mix between 1 and 2 in most people's pound for pound. Scary puncher. We spoke about his technique before, the way he manages the distance. He's a predator. He's an exciting fighter, and probably the best outcome for Doheny was that something like that happened where he got an injury to the back and got out before he had to shell too much punishment because he wasn't going to quit. But fuck me, like, the shots, they look so painful to the opponents that they land on.
They did, yeah. Inoue started putting hands on him, didn't he, Rob? Round 4, 5, and 6, yeah.
You just know he's going to go to the body from distance. Like, he's able to whip shots around. His body punches don't even look like normal punches. It's kind of he just dips his leg and he whips them around kind of in a straight, like, he's a scary guy. Like, I don't see anyone at his weight class beating him. The only way he's going to get beaten is if they make him come up, if the pressure makes him come up the weights and the money's there too much for him to go up, and then, one of these kind of investors gets behind a super fight or whatever, and he just bites off too much to chew at a certain point of his career. But like, he's one of those guys, just enjoy him while you're here. Like, he's very active as well, isn't he? How many times have we seen him out now in the last? He's got
four times in the last 12 months. Yeah, Rob. Yeah,
it was Fulton to Palace, was it? Neary, Butler then hung on, but yeah, like, he's always out. He seems to be always out. Like, stays fit, doesn't have any kind of injury problems, hand problems, anything like that. So yeah, again, one of these guys, he'd probably never cross over to the wide screen, to the wide kind of mainstream masses, but you should just enjoy watching him because he does everything right. He's such a fucking scary guy. He's never in danger of even losing a fucking round these days. Like, when do you see people taking rounds off him? Very rarely. Like, I know what's my man? Fucking
Fulton?
No, not Fulton. Didn't take any rounds off him.
Neary dropped him, didn't he?
But it was only like he woke him up, wasn't it?
Correct. It made him angry. Yeah.
Just kind of it was a lapse of concentration, kind of knocked him over, and then he just kind of went to work. I'm talking about
Donaire breaking his jaw was
no,
pretty
they're not.
natural.
Yeah, Donaire, Nonito gave a good account of himself in the first fight, and maybe a younger version might have been the man to beat him, but it's going to take a special guy now. Like, I don't think there's anyone around that can rival him. He's unrivaled in his weight class and in the weight classes around him. He really is the best fighter down there, and he'll go on as long as he can, or as long as he wants to, as long as he doesn't go up too far, I think.
And Rob, that Inoue and Donaire fight, Donaire was brilliant, but he done very well not to get stopped that night. Donaire, I mean, he put in a brilliant performance. But great fighters have them nights against other great fighters. Do you remember when Floyd had the similar thing with Castillo, but then they put it right in the return, didn't they?
And then, yeah, exactly. Like, I think he might have thought he was getting Donaire the first fight at the right time, and he hadn't been tested as much. And Donaire gave him something different to look at when he wasn't just going to go away. Do you know that way? And he's always dangerous Donaire because of his punch. Always dangerous. Like, I think Rigo might have given Fitz him a prime Rigo and him at maybe 122 would have been something to behold because Rigo just wasn't getting hit at that weight class.
Well, and his head is very static. I mean, if there's something you hold against Inoue, his head's very static. His defense has always been his feet.
And Rigo could crack as well in the lower weights, 118 to 122. So that would have been prime for prime, a really good fight. But you take a fighter like that to bring out the best in Inoue as well. So like you could easily see him being the one who gets like a win by a KO there or a decision either. Like, so, like I said, fucking probably peerless at the moment, but enjoying watching him every time he's out, even if it is against a guy who hasn't got a fucking hope against him, like poor Al Doheny. Like, he was so out of his depth.
He was.
It was just scary watching the ending. So a good ending for him, probably with a back injury, is probably, he lived to fight another day, probably got another few paydays. So good for him. Like.
Well, and they say that he's going to fight in the United States in 2025, and he'll fight in Japan in December. I just looked, and that's the exact words that they're giving on that. So I don't know if it's going to be Akhmadaliev or if it's going to be Goodman, but I think them or
he's calling for the fight, isn't he? Akhmadaliev is like saying that anyways, looking at him and that, and that he go to Japan to fight him. He walked.
I don't know what the hell happened there, Rob.
I don't know. You still hear me?
Yeah, that was weird. Go ahead.
No, I'm saying Akhmadaliev has been calling him out, hasn't he?
Yeah, and I just don't know if it matters. I mean, he cares. I think you have those two. You have Goodman, Akhmadaliev, and I think the wild card is Nakatani coming up from 118 to fight him in an all Japan battle. I think that that's a huge money maker over there. But if he's doing that, I think then he's at 126 coming stateside, going against the top ranked talent there. Espinosa Ramirez 2 has been ordered. We'll see where Angelo Leo goes. If Top Rank wants to be good to us, what they would do is they would potentially put Lopez Leo rematch on the undercard, or as the main event with Robeisy Ramirez and Rafael Espinosa too. That would be a hell of a card. And then you have a unified champ for Inoue to fight. So I don't know if I could, to plan it out in my dream. That would be the way it would all function.
Who knows what's going to happen with Riyadh season and all, and Latinos night and all that as well. You don't know what we're
Latinos night.
You hear about that one? No.
No, I didn't hear about that one.
Turkey and Oscar are getting together to have a Riyadh season Latinos night, apparently.
Right on.
Well, we wish them well.
Drinking margaritas and banging senoritas. Ole. So, let's see here. Ames is coming in, but at some point I hope. But let's start going through this Canelo card because there's a lot of stuff on this one. Start at the bottom and work our way up or where it makes sense here. Got a undefeated Jonathan Lopez taking on Richard Medina. I'm trying to think I've seen Lopez before. Let's see here. I don't think so. So this will be he fought Eduardo Baez and he beat him. That's a decent victory for a young fighter. So Yeah, we'll follow him up. Taking on again, that's going to be he's taking on Richard Medina, 15-2. Roy Monvilla, I know him, taking on Ricardo Salas Rodriguez at welterweight. A couple of draws recently on Mr. Rodriguez's resume there. Against kind of one is against an undefeated guy, but there's some lack in this resume probably. So that you might see Villa run over top of this guy. We'll see. Anything's possible on that one, but and then Rolly Romero. Oh boy, he's back in the ring following his defeat to Isaac Cruz, who has lost since then, going in against the 1-1 Manuel James. See here, James is on one of his last 4 since he lost to Pedro Bernal Rodriguez, who is 8-1-2. He has a draw against 12-4-1 fighter. We'll see what Raleigh's got left here. He beat Jonathan Romero. That's a decent win. We'll see how Mr. Manuel James does here against Raleigh Romero. I don't know. I think
Raleigh needs a big knockout.
He does. He just needs
a big knockout to con himself back into another big fight with his likable weird stick that he has that fucking somehow draws his fucking media numbers up and makes people want to see him in a good fight. Like they know he can open his mouth to sell it, even though he's not going to fucking do it when it comes to crunch time. But if he stinks out the place and gets a decision here, you might not see him back for a long time.
Well, his so much of his him as a fighter is related to confidence, and if he doesn't have confidence, he's going to fight like crap. So we'll see. As you said, he needs a big knockout, not just for the night, but I think for the rest of his career, because he's got to feel good about himself. Because I think there's no way, after considering he was in the ring when it happened, that he didn't know that Tony Weeks saved his ass, or however it might have worked out in the end.
Yeah.
So. I don't know.
He exposed Gervonta Davis as well. Let's not forget that he gave the blueprint to beating Tank Davis up until he got knocked out. He was winning the fight up until he got knocked out, according to him. So
everything worked out perfectly until he didn't know where he was. So let's see here. The return of your boy, Stephen Fulton there. He's taken on Carlos Castro, who is a capable fighter in his own right. I think this could actually be a very competitive match. I think Fulton is quite the favorite in this one, so that's interesting. Caleb Plant coming back off of his most recent defeat to Mr. David Benavidez in a fight where he took a hell of a beating. It's one of those ones where I just felt it was merciful to stop it getting into the last couple rounds. I don't know. I know that not everybody agrees with me, but we'll see if that took anything out of him. He's taken on the undefeated Trevor McCumbee, who he's, I don't know. It's Caleb Plant against a white guy, so he's definitely going to have the black advantage in this one, Rob. Christopher Pearson on his resume.
I think
Jesse Nicolo.
Plant's legs are gone, aren't they?
I don't know. He looked good in the Benavidez fight for like the first 6 rounds, right? So I don't know if they're gone or so much if maybe he doesn't have wheels for all 12 anymore.
I thought it was like signs of it in the first Canelo fight where he was like blowing a gasket. I thought like trying to make a deal with Canelo, a peace treaty in the middle of the fight, talking to him and that. And then the Benavidez one, like it just, I think he's in deep trouble if he goes past 8. Not necessarily against this guy, but if he's ever back in, if he's back in contention for the top level, like. But he was a capable fighter, Caleb Plant, good guy, lovely style, but just hasn't got that. He hasn't got the killer punch, has he? And it's
well, I mean that fight against Anthony Durrell, he lost that double left hook.
Yeah, that was class. Like class operator, like classy fighter, lovely skills, silky fighter. But I think when you haven't got the equalizer and the legs start to go, like fellas start hitting you around the hips and the body after 6 to 8, it can be rough. Like.
Yeah, this the guy he's going in with, I don't know that he's looking like a whole lot. I think I might have seen him on this Pro Box card in January of this year against Pearson. Basically blanked him on the scorecards. But I don't know. I don't know if this is the guy, Rob. I don't know if this is the guy. I think Caleb is going to get one more chance because he's going to get through Mr. Trevor McCumbee.
Yeah, I don't think McCumbee beats Plant, but I'm with Rob as well. I mean, Plant's been very inactive. He's like down to one fight a year, and he's lost 2 of his last 3. And even the Dirrell one, that brilliant left hook got him out of trouble because it was a very stagnant fight where 2 old war horses were cancelling each other out in a lot of that fight. So I think he's earned really good money against Canelo. He would have got well paid against Benavidez, but he took 2 good hidings. I wonder what Caleb Plant's got left. I really do.
Yeah, maybe I wasn't thinking of betting that one in the first place, but I think you guys at least made me think I will stay away from it entirely at this point in time.
And what might be good value is Lara against Garcia. Garcia has been really inactive, and I know Lara's old, but if you've been inactive, I'm not sure if one fight in nearly 4 years, Danny Garcia wants to go in with someone with an awkward, horrible style like Lara. That could be one that catches Garcia out.
You know, he's not the favorite in that fight. Lara's the favorite in that one.
Makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah.
Garcia's paying a little bit less than 2-1, but it's been nipping a little bit closer in that realm. I think by the time the fight comes, he might be paying about 3-2. But I actually have Danny as part of a parlay that I got going on, and we'll see how it goes. I think I have Josh Kelly against Liam Smith in there because I think Smith is done from what we saw in the Eubank fight. That's just my opinion, and a couple of other fights that were lingering up ahead. But Lara is, let's see here. He's at 160, but you got to think, who has he fought at right since he's been at 160 pounds? He's fought Thomas Lamana, who is obviously no great shakes. He landed a smoking straight left on him. He went 8 rounds with Gary O'Sullivan. Just smacked him around quite a bit. But I mean, that's Gary. And funny enough, so he fought Lamana when Lamana was 34-1. He fought O'Sullivan when he was 31-4, and then he fought Michael Zarafa when he was 31-4. Took him out in 2 rounds. But I mean, he's been fighting once a year, and he's only fought 3 rounds in the last 3 years. He's 41 years old. I mean, I know Garcia's been inactive, but Garcia is still a handful of years younger than him. I think Garcia is probably 36-ish or so.
Lara's going to stop Garcia.
You think?
Yep. I don't think Garcia has any business being up around 160.
I don't think Lara does either. Do you?
You think he's more comfortable there though? Thinking about Sonny about it, like he was a career 54-pounder, like he was getting up the weights, last 6 pounds to him. Like he's proved all right. He hasn't beaten the top, but there is no top caliber middleweights really around for him to test himself again. The best of the bunch, he's flatlined him, and I think Garcia is too easy to hit, and Lara can punch a bit. Like I think he'll stop him. I think
I might hedge my bet with that.
Come out in the wash with Garcia at some stage that he's underachieved as it is. Like he should have achieved way more. He took the money and ran, pissed about on Instagram, did Scarface impressions. Didn't live the life by all accounts. Went to the club, but
dresses like a fucking goon.
Yeah, his dad's an asshole. I think Lara could stop him down the stretch.
Interesting on that one.
And sorry, Matty.
Go ahead, Des.
You're right. Lara, for his age, has had 1 fight a year, but Garcia's almost had 1 fight in 4 years, and we can't underestimate. He spoke about having some sort of breakdown, some sort of depression, mental health troubles, and he's a spender. He lives a very, very good life. You see it on Instagram. He likes fast motors. He likes a few girls. He likes going to clubs. He likes a bit of clobber. Danny Garcia has lived a really good life in the last 4 years, and it ain't the life of a boxer. I just wonder if Lara is the right guy to go in with. It's a hard fight for him, that one.
I'm thinking on this one, and I believe that Ames is joining us here. I just feel that if this fight does go the distance, and I know Rob's thinking that Lara might get the stoppage here, my hunch is that is that Danny Garcia is going to get a close and very controversial decision. Ames, are you buying my bullshit?
I don't know. Like, there's only really a couple of times where Danny Garcia has really underperformed. I think whenever he's had a meaningful fight, he's always given the best of his ability. And I think the best of his ability right now is probably enough to overcome an aging and a willing to stand and throw Erislandi Lara. So I'm kind of favoring Danny in this one. No real other feeling than that. No real other breakdown than that. But I think Garcia. This is a real retirement fight for either of them, really. Maybe more so Lara than Garcia still. But for either one of these losers, it's hard pressed to see where they come back from a defeat. But I think Garcia's got enough in the tank to get rid of Lara.
Interesting. I like I said, I've got Danny as part of a parlay that's taken many weeks to go through. I just got this hunch, and he's just Danny Garcia. As much as I dislike him, a lot of it's because he ends up lucky on so many things that he shouldn't have ended up lucky on, and I think that he's still got one more in him for some reason. It's just my hunch, but it's interesting to see that the panel is split on this one. That makes me happy to know that maybe this one at least will be an interesting and competitive fight. Possibly,
you kind of have to go back a long way for a top quality Danny Garcia performance, haven't you? Like, not at this weight class either. Like, Lara's been operating here for a while. I know he's on the way out now, but I've a feeling like Lara could probably go at least 45 and then go to BKB for another 2 years. Like, you see him out there when he's 47 or something. That way. Like,
that would be funny.
I don't think he has any plans to retire at all. Like, I think we're retiring Lara before he fancies it. Like, so I just think Garcia at the best of times, his defense is very open. Like, he's fucking fights with his hands by his side. Lara with that southpaw fucking big long jab. I think he'll just poke holes in him all night.
Yeah, I also do remember Zab eating him up right down the middle when they fought in the later rounds.
Yeah, and he got there and Zab was shot. Like, that way he was shot at that stage.
But one thing that, Garcia being a left hook artist, the one thing that he did very well in that fight too was he had a strong straight right hand in that one that he played as a lead that gave Zab all sorts of troubles as well.
His biggest strength was timing, Garcia. And now that he's like this, he's having one fucking fight every 4 years. I don't know if the timing's going to be there. That way he always had power. He timed.
That's really important. That's really important.
Don't bring it up. Don't bring it up.
What, that left hook that he threw from his hip?
Don't bring it up. No. It's I get that sentiment that you're on about, Matty, because Garcia, he's all talked about, and maybe one of these fighters that could be the next big thing, and they never really improved after he won a world title. Never really did anything after that. He seemed to just be happy with the success that he got, and never really fulfilled any further potential that some people may be talking about him. He's just like a no frills boxer, does kind of everything kind of well, but nothing else really spectacular about him. He's very much kind of faded into the background when other fighters have been able to kind of soar past him because they've just got that little bit more about him. He's done well with what he's been capable to do, and he did have good timing, and they did have that spectacular game plan before the fight to really lure Khan in and also capitalize upon Khan's defensive inabilities on that night. Don't even want to relive that night.
No, I have to live with the Matisse loss too, buddy. I feel you. I feel you.
I think.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think Khan's Danny Garcia's best winning, and he wasn't meant to win that fight, and he caught Khan out because he discovered that if you punch with Khan, Khan's dangerous. If you punch with Khan, Khan's vulnerable, and he wasn't meant to win that fight. He wasn't meant to win the Eric Morales fight after that. And then he fought a faded Zab. And if you look at the guys he has beat, like the Brandon Rioses and the Robert Guerreros, when Robert Guerrero was past his best, I think he beats guys of a level. But Spence, Porter, even when he got Furman, he's never going to beat that caliber of fighter. That doesn't mean he can't beat Lara. But I just think Lara's going to ask so many questions of him. I'm not sure if we've ever seen anything of Danny Garcia in his career to suggest that he can answer those questions.
I think at his best, Danny was kind of a B+ fighter, and at his best,
Yeah, it's a
Lara
good
was
shout.
Lara was like an A-, you know.
That's a good shout, B+, yeah.
But you know, Lara at 41 years of age, is he still an A-, or is he now a B+? Is this total level playing field? I don't know. Now I'm more interested in this fight, even though I laid a couple bucks on it. Now Rob has me talked into a cover of a Lara stoppage, because there's got to be good money on that one. Because I mean, Lara by stoppage against Garcia, who has never, I don't even think Danny Garcia ever been down in his career.
I think he's going to stop him to the body though.
Huh. You're getting very specific here, Rob. Have you been taking psychedelics and consulting with the gods?
Sometimes you just see these things before they play out. You know what I mean?
All right. Well, we'll find out. That was far more of an interesting breakdown on that fight than I thought we'd have. That was rather enjoyable, actually. Let's see here. And then on that card, let's see here. Yep. And then we got the main event on there. Unless anybody wants to touch on any of those undercard fights again. Again, we had Plant and McCumbee, Fulton and Castro, Ramiro and James, Villa and Salas Rodriguez. James, I know you're a little bit late to the party there. Anything you might wanted to touch on those?
No, happy to move forward with it. Nothing to really add to value to either of any of the undercards fights.
All right. Well, the main event is going to be Saul Canelo Alvarez against Edgar Berlanga. Yes, Mexico against Puerto Rico. The crowd should be wild. This could be a heck of an event. Canelo is a huge favorite here. You're having to lay $10 just to make a buck on him in most places. It by knockout. I think it's somewhere you're having to lay 4 to win a buck. It's not pretty unless you're getting more specific than that. So I'm going to ask the panel, can we get more specific than that? Des, how do you see this playing out?
I always throw these examples up and always try and measure these type of fights against fights we've seen. You guys, I'd love to know what you think. Is Berlanga against Canelo, is it as a bigger task or a bigger ask as, say, Crolla versus Lomachenko or Rocky Fielding against Canelo? Where would you place Berlanga in that?
Say that again?
So we had Crolla versus Lomachenko.
Uh-huh.
And we had Fielding against Canelo. Where do you place this type of challenge with Berlanga versus Canelo? Is it has he got more chance of beating Canelo and Rocky Fielding? Has he got more chance of beating Canelo than what, say, Crolla had against Lomachenko? How much of an underdog?
I have more chance of beating Canelo than fucking Rocky Fielding.
Right.
Well, you had the
I'd say
size
Berlanga has
advantage,
a better chance. Yeah, I think he's a better chance than both of those guys, but I still think he's one step too far from him. I just think Canelo too sharp in the counter, dictate the pace of the fight, the magnitude of the fight. But Berlanga, in a way, is nothing to lose. Like, if he goes balls to the wall and tries to make it a shootout, he might be able to do something. He did punch, but they say a lot of his punching power was a myth as he went up the levels. So can he crack? But Canelo's kind of showed his beard over the years, hasn't he? He's fairly granite in the chin. Like, could he crack enough to put a dent in him? I don't know. Like,
well, how does Berlanga win this one? I can't see him. I can't see him making a dent in Canelo. I'm trying to play this one out. So when I think back to, say, the guys Canelo has boxed, in, say, the last 4 or 5, whether it's John Ryder or Munguia or Caleb Plant, I'm trying to think. I think all of them guys beat a Berlanga. So I can't give Berlanga any chance in this one. I just can't see how he can get to him.
He might have a puncher's chance. I think if you're willing to get in unorthodox, a little bit wild, you never know what can happen in there. Ames, what are you thinking on this one? I think the over-under on rounds on this one was either 7.5 or 8.5. Are you thinking this could be a very early night?
I don't know. I mean, it's just, because it's such a leap in levels for Berlanga, who's never really had that bridging fight to anywhere near, Canelo's status, either prime or where he's at right now, or even that world level, really, with respect to his fights he's had previously. It's really kind of hard to gauge where truly Berlanga is, even though we've seen him, falter. I was there live and watched him against Jason Quigley in New York, and that had a killer undercard fight, Cusimano versus the Polish heavyweight, who I've forgotten his name of now, annoyingly. But it was a great fight on there that really kind of stole the card. But yeah, I remember people
Kanowski.
Kanowski, that's the one, yeah. And I believe he's still going. But yeah, I was there ringside to watch Berlanga up close and personal. And you just kind of saw the inability for him to really finish his opponent, as well as the want to be able to coast as well too, and not really press on the gas. He had his opponent beaten and could have really found that.
Ames, can I come in now?
Yeah, of course, go for it.
Ames, Berlanga's only stopped one in his last 6. He's not even a puncher.
Mm-hmm. But just in terms of his game, though, like you'd want to see this from that type of fighter who's been groomed for this position against Canelo, because whenever we look at Canelo fights, we're looking at successes. That's what we're looking at when it comes to it. And because we've never seen that from Berlanga, we immediately write off his chances. And all I'm saying here on this point is that there's reason to believe that and agree that right now Berlanga is not going to be a successor like they groomed Jaime Munguia to be, like they looked at other fighters who are trying to get that opportunity. And we see it in Berlanga or Benavidez, who it should have been. We're upset that we don't get that fight, and we look at Berlanga as a lesser offering here. But I think it's fair, because you'd want to see these hallmarks in a fighter's game when they rise up the ranks. You'd want to see them, box and show that they can deal with a real good boxer. And there were people outside of the knockdowns when it came to the Quigley fight that were saying that Quigley's boxing, like really boxing him well, really kind of showing what other fighters could do outside of Canelo to beat Berlanga. And I know that McCrory's team were like really confident that with the bit of power that McCrory has as well too, that they could really land something on him, like Caceres was able to do. I think, look, from a Berlanga perspective, you've got to really hope that Canelo has an off night that we've never really seen him have. You've got to bank on Canelo slipping a little bit more, because this is a fighter who clearly picks his spots and it was always kind of a thing with Canelo on the rise, that he was never fully a 12-round fighter and struggled with being able to manage his gas tank. He's managed that as much as he possibly can, but if he's on the slide a little bit more now, does he lose an extra bit of round where he has to recover now? And that's where Berlanga picks his spots, and his athleticism and youth is what kind of takes him over the line. But you've got to roll the dice so many times and got to hope that you don't get hit with a big shot from Canelo, who's shown such savviness in his offense that he can get you out there by immobilizing your lead left hook, like he did against Callum Smith so brilliantly. He's shown that he can hurt you to the body. He's shown that he can really, like he did with Amir. We're talking about Amir Khan again, a fight I don't want to bring up, but he's shown he's got that one punch knockout power if he catches you correctly. He's never really shown real kind of true weaknesses unless he's fought someone like Gennady Golovkin. I maintain that Golovkin beat him twice there, but no doubts about the third time. And then Bivol, when it was him stepping up to a different weight, and it was more of the weight thing against his factor. It's all kind of laid all against Edgar Berlanga, and I really struggle to really find. I'm clutching at straws here to really kind of back Edgar Berlanga here to get the victory. And the cliches will come out. And that's what this is. They can get Berlanga beat. They can almost cash him out here, get him the money now. And, there's no shame in losing to Canelo Alvarez right now. There's no shame in it. You'll get the rub of rubbing your shoulders with a star like Canelo, and that builds you up. And as long as you give a great showing in front of your own fans, Puerto Rico fans, and the Mexican fans as well too, those fans will then follow you and see what your next fights are like. And if you keep progressing, if you keep showing that you're a blood and guts fighter and you want to get those big knockouts and those big nights and those big fights, you'll get that following. And that's the win here for Edgar Berlanga as opposed to the win on the record.
Now, I'm trying to remember what fight it was, but if you recall, Berlanga bit an opponent in one of his fights. I can't remember what one that was. And he's kind of shown that you can get in his head a little bit. He's a bit of a head case. And I'm just throwing out there that
He's chucked
Canelo
it already.
Canelo to win by DQ is 100-1. I think that's worth a punt.
Yeah, it's not outside the realms. I think he's chucked it already. I heard him saying in the press conference, I respect you, I respect you. It's the same shit Caleb Plant said in the middle of the fight with Canelo. It's like, you're jacking it already. Like, all right, you can respect fighters and all, and say it afterwards. I have a lot of respect for him. But in the build-up, like, it's like he was conceding ground because he doesn't know. I think the magnitude of the occasion is too much for him. And he's conceding that ground to Canelo already, like, by telling me he respects him before the fight. And I just thought, like, you've given it up here. Like, no, I'm not a fucking psychologist or whatever, but it just, I needed to point that out because in case people did think I was a psychologist, that's all I needed to make that specific, what you call it, fucking adjustment. But you see what I mean. I just think, but like you're saying, he's a little bit petulant, isn't he? He's not a puncher. If he goes, his best hope of winning is going balls to the wall. Guts and glory, like trying to fucking draw Canelo into a shootout, maybe hope for some reason that Canelo gets tired, which he's not going to, is he? Like, he's loaded. And I just think, I think he's already conceded ground to Canelo. I wouldn't be surprised if it's like a Canelo body shot stop. I'm predicting everybody gets stopped with body shots next weekend, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is a kind of body shot stoppage where he doesn't fucking beat the count. You know that one where it's like 9 and you go to get up. Oh, he could have got up, but he didn't. Oh, there you go. The referee's waved it off. Like, because I just can't see him finishing the fight somehow.
Fighters are so terrible at selling that some of the times because as soon as the referee hits 10, they go and get up. No, like, when it killed you to stay down there an extra 7 or 8 seconds for people to feel like, oh man, you really took that shot hard. Like,
my favorite was the Montel Griffin one against Jones in the first fight where the punch lands late and then he just has a look at the referee and then just swan dives face first into the canvas after a couple of seconds and starts selling the DQ. Like, that's if you get me with a body shot, I'm going full Matthew Macklin against Golovkin. I'm going to go roll around, bang on the ground like De La Hoya, and I'll just really fucking hammer it home. Like, I'm not going to be trying to beat the count at fucking 10. I want you know what I mean? I have to make people believe that I'm fucking grimacing.
Hey Rob, what? Berlanga seems to be a bit of a rapper's delight. He's got Fat Joe and DJ Khaled hyping him up. You didn't want to be the third in that little trifecta there?
But I actually, fucking Fat Joe is connected to boxing pretty deeply. He was in the ring, I think, with Tito Trinidad as well at one stage, right before the fight with B Hop, and he said famously in his verse on Ja Rule's New York, even Roy Jones was forced to lean back, referring of course to his own hit song Lean Back, and the fact that Roy Jones had just been poleaxed by Glenn Johnson and Antonio Tarver. But apparently Jones took exception to this in a nightclub and went to go confront Fat Joe, and Fat Joe went back down by Roy Jones, knew obviously that he couldn't win in a fight with Roy Jones, and he was like, listen, I know you're Roy Jones and I know you can knock me out, but you're not going to leave this club because there's 100 Puerto Ricans in here and they're all armed. So fucking that's an interesting standoff. But Berlanga, I'm sure will get the support of all the Puerto Ricans, and it'll be that. I just don't. It's a bit of a B-level fight, isn't it? All of a sudden, we know we want the Benavidez, like that was the Puerto Rican Mexican clash we wanted. We don't want this version, like, and it's a bit of a fucking, we have Benavidez at home, that way.
Yeah, let me just say, like, if for some reason my prediction is real that it comes to be that Canelo wins by a DQ, and you have that Puerto Rican versus Mexican pumped up audience, it could be a hell of a scene. Like, could be pretty bad actually.
Like the Arghh Hall on a bad night, there might be more fights in the crowd than
No, like Canelo and Chavez Jr.
There were fights in the crowd there.
I can't remember if there was fights in the crowd there, but just the pictures of seeing his father just with his head in his hands, and that type of moment you can see just along those type of lines.
Yeah,
but he
that
can't afford
was
to.
awful. Yeah,
He can't afford to quit. He can't. Berlanga can't afford to quit. He can't afford to be seen to be taking an easy way out from a beating here from your own fans who expect you to be Herculean, and then the Mexican fans who are, they watch countless of their heroes, rise and fight against their own heroes, or their own heroes, fight back. And so you cannot wilt in this moment. Berlanga cannot wilt in this moment because it will haunt him. It will follow him for the rest of his career if he does try and look for that easy way out, Matty. Like, someone would have, I imagine, had a quiet word with him and said to him, like, after that bite, and it's like, look, you've got away with it here, that it's not been really kind of spotlighted and blown up even more so, because you shouldn't be doing those type of things in the ring. But if that catches up to you on this big night that you're looking for, like, you won't live it down. Everything is captured these days. Every single angle, everything is seen and taped, and it lives forever. That's something you cannot and should not do against Canelo.
Matty, you're on mute, dog.
I think Matty's had one of these moments. he's bit through his Wi-Fi somehow. He's magic. He just took a chomp out of air and bit through his Wi-Fi. We've got to add him in. There you go. You're back in, Matty. Earth to Matty, abducted by one of
He's still
Kelly's
talking on the last point, didn't he?
Probably buffering. Michael buffering.
Right. Well, while we're waiting for Matty to come back, I suppose, how long more do we expect Canelo to hang around here? Like,
I don't know, to be honest with you. Like, I mean, the paydays. Let me just add Matty in, but the paydays are coming still. I mean, he's reopened kind of the door a little bit to the Saudi scene and said, like, that Crawford fight isn't off the table here. So if those paydays keep coming, and if these paydays are still weighted in his favor, he can keep going, because the Saudis need a ready-made star to attract people over to Riyadh and Jeddah or wherever it is they're hosting fights. And if you can keep the cow producing milk, then you can milk it forever, or as long as possible. So really, like, if they can smooth those negotiations over and get those fights over the line, like, he can still have prosperous for you extra years in his career if he really wants it. Although he doesn't need the money, sure, but again, with fights that could be easily made for him and not as big of a challenge as a Berlanga or a Benavidez would pose to him, then he can keep going for as long as he wants, really.
Yeah.
Well, they're trying to really grow the business boxing on the island again. MVP Promotions announced that they're going to be doing a series of shows over the coming years in Puerto Rico and trying to sign more prospects. It sounds like that's going to be Amanda Serrano's project when she's done in the ring and entirely. She's already involved heavily, but it sounds like she's got her plans already. I wouldn't doubt if she's done after the Katie Taylor fight. But anyways, yeah, if Berlanga, if he gets DQ'd, it could be hell. They won't forget it, especially if it's some sort of a dirty, stupid move like repeated low blows, Andrew Galata style. Hopefully that doesn't occur. But Rob, I'm going to ask you, like, everybody obviously rates Notorious B.I.G., above pretty much everybody, but who would you rate higher between Fat Joe and Big Pun?
I don't even think you get an argument from Fat Joe that Big Pun was fucking the better one. Like, he said Pun helped improve his writing and all that. Fat Joe gave Pun the opportunity to be a star and learned a lot from him after that. But Big Pun is one of those generational talents. Like, it's sad what happened to him. Sad that he left so early. But yeah, his 2 albums that he left were fucking incredible. Like, and to this day, you could bump them and it'd still be classics. But yeah, the whole Fat Joe or Big Pun at higher has a better legacy than Fat Joe for sure. But Fat Joe is a legend too. Fat Joe was actually hip hop to the core. Like, he goes back to the Tats crew, the terrorize all toys graffiti crew from the Bronx. So he's fully fledged hip hop legend himself. But yeah, pun.
There you go. All right. Before we go here, I'm going to get some exact predictions from you guys. So for anybody who wants to go the more exact route with their picks instead of generic, the guys are going to go this way. The DQ I got is a bet. I don't think that's what I'm going to say exactly, but I think that Canelo is going to stop him around the 7th round. Where are you going, Ames?
Canelo around 9.
9. Rob?
Canelo between 8 and 12, or Canelo lopsided decision.
Okay. Des?
I agree with a lot of what Ames said. Most of what Ames said. I think Berlanga's got this reluctance to want to engage. I think he discovered he's not the puncher he was told he was. And I think Canelo will get him out there in 6 rounds.
6. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Des is going the most aggressive on that one. Rob is being the most conservative on that one. We'll see how this one goes. I think that the card, as I look through it more, I think there's some stuff that could be decent on there. Like you guys got me convinced that even, my better regardless. I think that Lara against Garcia is interesting. And I think Fulton against Castro is more interesting than most people are saying. And I think it's more interesting than the books believe. But again, I think your fight of the week could end up being on Friday with Rocky Hernandez against Thomas Matisse, but we'll see. I didn't have anything gathered value of the week. My health has been busy, and I understand that. I'm doing what I can, folks, which is far more than I should with everything going on. Not with the podcast. I got a lot of shit on my plate. But anyhow, I just saw a funny tweet that FMG put in there for people. It was apparently you got some sport going on there, and it says, for any England fans heading over to Dublin for the Nations game, my friend owns a pub called the George on 89 Great George's Street, Dublin, and is only allowing in England supporters as a place to gather safely, so make sure you get in nice and early. The first response says, "You lying bastard, it's a gay bar. No one's in here." Anyhow, he's lucky no one was in there. Could have ended even worse.
Great bunch of lads in there.
So, yeah.
I great bunch of lads. I didn't say they were in there, just for the record.
So, yeah, apparently that's going on there too. So I hope that everybody is very, very entertained here. But we're going to be back. I think I'm going to try to do a call-in show, maybe try to see if anybody from the wonderful Nutters group decides to get in their predictions for this Canelo Berlanga fight later this week. But then next week for Joshua against Dubois, we're going to have a regular Sunday show. I'm going to try to get a call-in show during the week, and then optimistically going to get some of the old boys in here for a Friday post-weigh-in show with some predictions in there. So I hope to get all that done for you guys, even if I'm not here for everything. I, unfortunately, am going to be on vacation while that fight is going on. So unless I end up in a place that happens to be showing it, I am not going to be witnessing it firsthand at all. Sad to say, because I do think it's going to be a good card. A few toss-up fights in there if you want to dig deep in them. Yeah, hopefully we will still have a show, talk to Steve, talk to Ames, try to coerce him into still hosting a Sunday show so we can bask in the glory that was AJ versus Dubois. We hope it lives up to the hype and you guys have another great domestic heavyweight scrap. But until next Sunday, I would like to thank Ames. I would like to thank Des. I would like to thank Mr. Rapp and Rob Callie for coming on here and being part of the Nuthouse, and everybody in the chat as well. Remember, you can join us on the Patreon, get part of that Nutters group, and enjoy the chat with all the guys that comment in here. It is a fun group, a lot of boxing knowledge in there. So you can check us out on patreon.com/boxingasylum. We would love to have you in there. But everyone, you have a great week ahead. We will see you here in a couple more. I'm off to Philadelphia. You folks have fun. Bye-bye.
We'll never forget.
I think that's good happening.
Go to Adam move!
We want to be honest, yeah?
Crying like a little bitch. I've never met a fucking swank that can fight me.
I fell asleep.
You're a fucking bum, you're a fucking asshole.
Rumpo fucking Steltskin.
But allegedly, Oscar Rivas has failed a test.
7-year ain't. 7-year ain't.
I will fucking smash fucking you.
I hope you fucking die.
Be safe.
I love boxing sounds, as simple as that.